pressure in his face, escapes the pocket, tucks the run. Across the 25, has the first down, stays in bounds, and takes it all the way into the end zone.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Rattler on 3rd and 8. Furman brings pressure, hit as he throws. Jump ball! What a catch! Xavier Legette! He is him!
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
2nd and 7. Ball outs. Mitchell dropped it. It's scooped up by Carter. You mentioned it. The 3-time captain, Mr. Duke, has a touchdown.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
It's an old school formation for West Virginia on 3rd and goal from the 2. They give it to Donaldson, and he is in for the touchdown.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Slovis under pressure, ducks away, sends it downfield. It's in the hands of Roberts, and he's loose. Chase Roberts being chased, but nobody's going to catch him. Touchdown, Cougars.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Coach Sonny Dykes looking for answers to DJ Giddens. No response here. Giddens to the house.
Now here's Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak.
Welcome in, Smokey off for the next couple of days. Craig will be off tomorrow celebrating his 40th birthday, where he gets to have that look in the mirror. So nothing's different, but everything feels different.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Everything feels pretty much the same, but yeah, that's just part of the deal. And here we go.
Garrett has coming up on that milestone later on, and we were talking earlier on Triple Option about like I promise you'll have this one moment where you realize that nothing that you thought about a 40-year-olds when you were like younger is true at all. Like you're just kind of different. But
I've found that about like everything in life. I try to tell younger people that your parents, your grandparents are just you, but older. That's all it is. Like nobody's like. I mean, you've got more wisdom and things, but more life experience, but that's about the only difference. You still think the same way. You're not like thinking like a 60-year-old all of a sudden. You're thinking like the same person you always were, and that's something you learn as you get older,
Yeah, you just react differently maybe with the knowledge that you've gained over the years. Thanks to everybody who's already in the chat starting off the show today. We've got a lot of stuff coming up for today. I had to stop the Triple Option early today, Craig, because Dennis Dodd sent me a text and said I can do here in the next 90 minutes. And I was like, well, let me make sure that's 365 Sports ready and not me standing over here doing it. And so it's going to look weird. So we recorded Dennis Dodd. Always great stuff from him. He's also at the Big 12 tournament. We've got Justin Williams of The Athletic on the Big 12 tournament, plus his thoughts on college football playoff and all that, because he really does a lot of good work on that. Mike Cassaza of 24/7 Sports. He covers the West Virginia Mountaineers on their basketball head coaching search. And Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com on the Cowboys awaking from their slumber, at least a little bit, in free agency with the signings of Eric Kendricks and the re-signing of Jordan Lewis today, and maybe more by 5:30 when he gets on the show. But Craig, first off, and Garrett, let's just get this out of the way with Greg Sankey in the NCAA tournament. An interview with Pete Thamel today. Greg Sankey, in regards to the NCAA tournament, said, "Nothing remains static. I think we have to think about the dynamics around Division I in the tournament." He added that recent runs by UCLA from the first four to the Final Four in 2021 and Syracuse's run to the round of 16, beginning with a play-in game in Dayton in 2018, show the caliber of power conference teams on the fringe of the NCAA tournament. That just tells you the bandwidth inside the top 50 is highly competitive. We are giving away highly competitive opportunities for automatic qualifiers from smaller leagues, and I think that the pressure is going to rise as we have more competitive basketball leagues at the top end because of expansion. this shouldn't surprise anybody but Greg Sankey. He is all about exclusion and not inclusion when it comes to things. And his basketball conference, and he's doing this from a position of strength because for years the SEC was kind of Kentucky and everybody else, or a good team and everybody else.
Florida won a national title.
Florida, but it was Florida and everybody else. But it's been a long time.
It's been 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, it's been
not for Florida. It's been a while though.
But it's been since 2012, and Kentucky had that great run,
right.
And the SEC's not been really relevant deep into the tournament all that much, and. Now they're in a position of strength. Auburn's good. Tennessee's good. Kentucky's good again. Go on down the list. Alabama's good. They've got really good basketball teams. Texas, routinely good, coming into the league. Oklahoma, routinely good, coming into the league. So their basketball swagger has grown, obviously, here. And he's speaking from more of a position of strength than he would a couple years ago. And notice he didn't mention an SEC team in this. But his point being that as these leagues expand, then their schedules will get tougher, as where the other leagues, their schedules won't get tougher. So we're giving automatic qualifiers to these leagues where other teams are playing tough ones. Well, I say tough crap, Greg, because you've chosen this path, and the tournament's great how it is. Now, this is also maybe cushioning the blow for none of us want the tournament to expand, really, but they're going to expand it, and this is the reason why. So, this is Greg Sankey telling you how he's going to ruin the NCAA tournament, essentially.
Well, Greet Sankey, as I'm going to refer to him from now on, he's made his points very clear here lately, and I saw a comment before I got over of Greet Sankey or Greg Sankey is pulling the mask off now. Folks, he never had a mask on. It was just the fact that some media covered him and helped perpetuate the ideas that he had what's best in mind for college athletics as a whole. I do think that in his mind, he probably thinks that what's best for college athletics as a whole is for his league and another league to basically go and do whatever they want, like it's a game of risk and they take over the whole board. And that's basically what they've done with very calculated moves over the last several years. And to their credit, a mastermind of a plan that's needed some others to contribute. And it's gone, I think, probably about as well as you could possibly imagine. I mean, look how quickly things have changed. And all of a sudden, we're talking just 3-4 years ago about possible expansion. And now here we are, and Greg Sankey's basically dictating what terms they want for the NCAA tournament. And you do have more spots when you add more teams that would normally take those spots. So, yeah, you're at 16 schools now. Guess what? If you go add more, you'll probably need more spots because you're going to have more teams. Like, everybody's getting bigger. So, of course, you want more spots because you have more teams to accommodate. So, yeah, I mean, this has been just a masterful job of again, I give credit to whoever years ago started concocting these plans behind the scenes. He certainly had to be a part of it to some extent. I know there's been others along the way. I don't think there's like some Illuminati group that's all been together this entire time because Kevin Warren was very fleeting, although he had a profound effect. But just whoever's like kind of guiding them through this, it just feels like it's a James Bond level villain plot of how they've been able to just swoop in, not behind the cover of darkness really, but with a little like smoke and mirrors, and then just out front because nobody can do anything about it, and just move their pieces around now. And now they don't have to hide it. There was no mask ever on, but if you thought that there was, like now, yeah, there's absolutely none, and they can basically go out and say what they want, and who's going to fight back? I mean, as we saw yesterday with the apparent agreement with the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, Big 12, everybody, G5 getting on board with the new playoff payouts. I mean, if you couldn't get any extra inch as a Big 12 or an ACC school with that, why are we to believe that you're going to get it anywhere else? Now, if you could, you would think it would be basketball. But the issue with basketball is that Brett Yormark also wants this. Why? Because that's where they can actually make a little bit more money, and they're also adding teams, so they want more teams into the tournament because that's, quite frankly, the only place where the Big 12 can really make a dent. Problem is, the Big 10 and the SEC are going to continue to make dents as well because they're adding teams, so yeah, I mean, this is just the continued takeover by some very calculated, smart, and power-hungry, greedy people at the top of a couple of conferences and the top of TV networks, and we're seeing it in real time, and it's happening just so quickly. I think that's what's making it so hard to wrap our heads around. But, yeah, the NCAA tournament expansion seems inevitable. We've heard Yormark talk about it. Now we're hearing Sankey talk about it. I'm sure others have commented on it as well. So that's going to happen, and I'm not in favor of it. We all laid that out the other day. We like the tournament the way that that it is, but I guess if you need that few extra $1,000 or $1 million or $2 million or whatever the case may be, you're going to go and grab that when you can. And certainly now is the time to go and shake up things because everything's being shaken right now. So, yeah, just more change and more wondering like what this all looks like on the other side of it all.
Yeah, I do like it's like a James Bond villain, like where he gets to the climax of the movie. And it's
Greed
like,
Sankey, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, hello, Mr. Bond. You may think you've got me now,
Yeah.
but my tentacles spread across the world.
Yeah. Oh, college football fans, you thought I really cared about you? I only care about my 16 teams or whatever. Yeah.
You could stop me if you want. You could kill me right now. But what does that do for the 14 nuclear weapons I have placed around the world that will go off at the stopping of my heart? Like that kind of a thing, you know.
I mean, dude, when you see his Twitter and sometimes he's quoting like whatever, like book or whatever. I mean, I think I don't want to give him too much credit, but I think that he's kind of been showing his hand the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of whether you picked up on it or not. I'm not going to say he's an evil genius, but I do think that just the way this is all unfolded, just so many little levers had to be pulled and the timing had to be so right. I mean, for the last 3 years, just everything that's happened, but they've played it beautifully, and that's why they're going to, get the dividends of it all.
And look, if a couple more, like if Oklahoma can beat Florida a couple, years back in a national championship game, if Ohio State wins more, if any team from any conference, like
Texas beats Alabama,
Texas beats Alabama.
And then, even then, who knows, it might not have mattered.
But even still, like the narrative that he was able to spin about football was because of their continued dominance in that, like winning national championships. Had anyone really knocked them off that pedestal a little bit to where instead of having like 15 of 20, if they had like 8 of 20, then, or maybe even just 10 of 20, his argument would not be nearly as strong.
Well, and
it would still be strong, but it wouldn't be like, he wouldn't be able to be like, well, I mean, we just keep winning it. So,
well, if Oregon had won in the Pac-12 when they had their multiple cracks, and Washington outside of in the early 90s, and USC had their run, but that was in the early 2000s. They hadn't done anything since then. So the Pac-12 schools weren't winning titles. The Big 12 schools weren't winning titles. Oklahoma was 0 for life since 2000 and their last title. I mean, they had so many opportunities to win national championships and failed or came up short every single time. Texas on a couple of occasions. How much does that change things? I think it changes things a little bit because all of a sudden you're going, hey, there's like 4 more titles here that weren't there otherwise. But instead, those were Alabama again, and Florida again, and Auburn, and
LSU.
And LSU. I mean, LSU beat Oklahoma, Florida beat Oklahoma, Alabama beat Texas, so on and so forth. So, if TCU has a better showing, I don't know that really changes anything because the hay was already out of the barn at that point with Oklahoma and Texas. And even if Oklahoma and Texas won those titles, Paul, maybe that doesn't matter, but the absence of anything from USC post-Pete Carroll or anybody else in the pack actually winning the whole thing, nobody past Texas in 05 in the Big 12. And then in the ACC, you had Clemson and Florida State. But even Clemson starting to tail off, and Florida State, it's been a while. So, it's a scenario where they went out and won, and that's all you can do. And so last night I was thinking about like all the reaction to the agreement about the college football playoff payouts, and a lot of people, this is the death knell. They just signed their own death warrant. And I understand that sentiment, but I also ask you, like I asked everybody at the end of the show today, give me their alternative. What else were they going to hold out? Were they going to say, hey, you do what we want or we're not going to be in the playoff? You think they're going to go, oh, my God, sorry, Brett Yormark, here, have $20 million more to spread. The alternative is something that is a mystery to me, and I would love to hear what that could have even been. Because last week I was saying, if you feel like you've got a legit argument, dig your heels in and fight this thing because you don't know how many more times you're going to be able to fight. But, Paul, here's the deal. The other question that I pose when talking about, if you have a legitimate case and a legitimate gripe and a legitimate chance to fight this, you have to fight this format. You have to fight the AQs. You've got to fight parts of this. Clearly, they lost on every single category, basically, from what we know so far. So the question that I really had was, you got to fight, but you got to fight if you know one thing in particular, and that is if you threaten to break off, not them threatening to break off like they've done 1,000 times at this point through their own words or through the media. We know that that's always something that they're now using as like this looming threat. Or do what we want or we're going to break off. So your alternative, if you were the Big 12 or the ACC, which again with the ACC, it's so hard to really talk about them in full because it's so shaky. Like it's not like they're all on the same page together and working together. They're clearly not. They're clearly in a moment of division. So I don't know how strong you are to really counter attack anyways. But the question I think boils down to with the whole playoff thing and just kind of in general, if you're just the Big 12, for example, do you have any sway to sit there and go, we don't want to do that, we're not going to do this, or we'll threaten to hold out? Or even, as some people have tried to put out there, or we mentioned before, you break off and do your own thing, or you threaten not to be a part of it, right? Well, my question was, do you make more money breaking off and doing your own thing, or do you make more money staying pat where you are and eating the S that's shoveled to you? And it sounds like they're better staying pat where they are and eating the S that's shoveled to them. And that's a harsh reality for some people to accept. I've never been under the illusion that they are the Big 12 on par with those other two. I think the way the payouts are structured, like number 4 is about right, given this current state of the ACC. If the ACC falls apart, then you're a number 3. I don't know what that means. But we had our question answered yesterday. They are still better off, financially at least, access-wise, taking what they can get versus fighting back. And so you wonder why they're not fighting back. Well, the alternative must not have been very good. So you take what you can get. And again, that's not something that people want to accept. And I understand that, but that's the reality of it. I mean, if there was a better alternative, you would go and jump at it. But right now, as an entity, you are better off getting your one automatic qualifier and your 4th place money and then going out and trying to earn more versus thinking that you have the ability to go off and go, you know what, we're going to break away ourselves and we'll do something on our own. And so that's why we are where we are. There's 2 voices in the room that matter. Everybody else can say what they want to say, but ultimately, Greet, Sankey, and the rest of the crew are going to do what they want and get what they want in the end. And going back to the winning thing, I was looking at the playoff format, and I saw 2 amongst the comments, well, this is basically going to be the SEC Big Ten Invitational, this 12, 14-team format, and that is going to be the case. And you can see where automatic qualifiers-wise, letting that open, you're going to have 5 teams maybe any given year from the SEC or Big Ten, and then there will be a little sprinkling. But, last year, for example, in an expanded format, do you know how many teams the Big 12 would have gotten in? They would have still gotten probably 1.
Yeah.
It would have been Texas, right? Because Oklahoma State had 3 losses going into the Texas game, including a horrific non-conference loss and a blowout, ugly loss late in the year to UCF.
Yeah.
So in my way of thinking, you don't deserve to be in the playoff. Like, if you want to be in the playoff, if you want to have more spots, and I'm not talking about Oklahoma State specifically, I'm talking about whoever's number 2, because yeah, you are facing the threat that you're going to get your champion in, and then beyond that, I can see why people think you should have taken the 2 automatic qualifiers because you automatically get those 2 teams. But in most years, if you want to have that second team or that third team, your teams have to win, man. That's what it all comes back to. You can't complain that, well, we'd only get 1 in and they're getting 6 in. Well, their 6 teams have 2 losses or less. The team playing for your conference title just took its 4th loss in the championship game. And had 2 awful losses. So don't lose those games. And you won't have the problem of, oh, man, we only got 1 in. It all comes back to winning, and those other conferences haven't won enough, and the ones that have been able to build up their pile of gold and their TV rights, and we're at a point now where, yeah, there is that definitive separation, and part of it's just tradition and history, but part of it's winning as well. And the only thing you can do from here on out, if you're the Big 12 and the ACC, again, asterisk next to them because who knows, but all you can do is go and win. And look, when you get 2 teams in the conference title game, don't have one of them that's 3 or 4 losses hanging over their head. Like, have a couple teams with 1 loss, and they're probably both going to get in. So I think there's a lot of fear-mongering going on, but there's also a lot of just reality that you need to look at and go, yeah, like there's not the level of contenders there, and so to change that, teams have to be better, and that's all you can really do because you're not overnight just going to stumble upon a Bill Gates who's going to fund you like the others are being funded. So all you can do is go out and win, and the problem with that, more than anything, is that it's going to be harder than ever to do that. So it's quite the scenario and the environment right now, and man, it is going to be fascinating to continue to see how this all unfolds.
There you go. That's the dragon, folks, right there.
Man,
breathing fire. And it's true. Like, everything you said was true, Craig. I mean, there's not even speculation in what you said. Like, it's just, this is where it's going down the tracks because again, the alternative, and you'll hear Dennis Dodd talk about this in a minute when we have him. Like, he believes that the scenario of bluff calling was very real. Like, if it wasn't just the ACC and Big 12, if everyone had gotten together and said, look, quit with your BS. This is nonsense. What are you going to do? And they're like, oh, well, you guys know we've been meeting together without you for like 2 months now.
Right.
And we have a plan for that. So Greg Sankey's always said they could have their own playoff.
Who are the TV networks most in bed with?
Yeah.
Who are they going to choose? ESPN, who's basically, we're the SEC, and then every other network says we're the Big Ten, and then we're also some of these other things. But where is the most money invested? Folks, the TV networks are on the side of them as well. So
the TV networks are actually a little bit more in the middle, but shaded towards them because they also are like what Greg Sankey is betting on, and what the Big Ten will be betting on is that no one would care if the other teams in the country were not involved in this.
Right.
Which I think ESPN is wary of doing.
I don't think that they believe that fully.
Yeah, because they don't they might be willing to in some kind of crazy money grab to save money and push off and see double down on all the the big things. If ESPN and Fox just said here's what we want. We want the SEC, we want the Big Ten. We'll take whatever other teams kind of fall into that, and then we want the NFL, the NBA, all the stuff that we know gets ratings for sure, as opposed to this other stuff that just kind of fills time to them, then I could see that scenario eventually happening. But they also know that, if you're going to cut off, 2/3 of the country from college football.
From relevancy in some ways.
Yeah, from relevancy in college football, that's not going to play well for your television ratings.
Right.
Yeah, and it's happened.
It's not going to play well for ESPN Plus when you want all of this catalog of games and whatnot. But they themselves have played a role in the figures that they've doled out. There's been clear differences in the money offered to certain conferences. So yeah, I think you're right about ESPN. I don't think they're trying to kill a league. I know the whole PAC thing might be different for people, but they still need inventory.
I think they weren't trying to kill the PAC, but they weren't going the PAC wasn't negotiating in good faith,
right.
in reasonable terms. They told the PAC what they were worth.
They tried to sign them.
They tried to sign them.
Yeah.
And then the PAC just kept on with this, circle of
we know better than you.
We know,
the circle of arrogance is what it was.
It's we know what we're worth, and you're okay, well. We're telling you what we can pay you, and we're willing to pay you, and what our formulas tell you. So you can take that or not. And then they then they come and he comes with an Apple TV deal, and all the ones are why are we in charge of making Apple TV people sign up? Isn't that Apple's job? This isn't a bringer show here. We're the attraction. We're headliners, and so that's why the PAC is dead. Not because of ESPN or Fox or anybody else, because they didn't read the tea leaves.
We killed the PAC. Haven't you read Twitter?
Yeah, we did.
Hey, I'll take credit for it. Y'all think that I have that kind of sway? Then by all means, I'm the killer of the Pac-12.
Believe me, I wake up in the morning and I had a systematic thing.
Yeah,
I was like
I could use a good nickname.
I was like Jean Reno in The Professional.
Right. But no, they had their chance, and had the PAC signed a TV deal, then the what ifs continue on. They don't really matter at this point because they didn't, and they are now where they are. And I know a lot of Washington State and Oregon State fans that I've seen are celebrating that they're now haha, Big 12 and ACC teams. I think there's still a little bit to play out, but I can understand that sentiment. Although I think it's such misguided anger on it's so weird how. I think the most masterful job of manipulation this entire time is how it's very clearly been two leagues making all the moves, and yet every time they make a move to kill one of the others or hurt one of the others turn on each other. It's like our politicians do so masterfully.
Yeah.
Is they do all this just arrogant, pompous, greedy stuff right in front of our faces, and then they just flip this little, sentence that gets everybody to just turn on each other and not pay attention. It's like the PAC wants to blame the Big 12 for killing them, it's like, who took USC and UCLA? Who took Oregon and Washington?
Yeah.
How did this all start? Who took Oklahoma and Texas? But it's so wild to me, how Wazoo fan wants to be mad at Oak State fan and not at Michigan fan. And it's they had way more to do with, or their league had. But anyways, that's fine. That's partially Twitter as well. But that's also too the political manipulations that have occurred throughout this whole ordeal. That's been one of the more bizarre but very real-life political kind of things that I've seen, where you just get the people fighting amongst themselves and don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain that's making all these moves and continues to. And so, I mean, be mad at whoever you want to be mad at. I think everybody's in a state of like, just what is going on. And yesterday provided a little bit of clarity. And, based on the ominous tones of Greg Sankey and, some unnamed AD out of the SEC again today in regards to, I think it was the basketball tournament. And there's various other quotes that have crept out. We're in for more change and more of whatever this looks like moving forward. I don't know, but all I know is that we're in a very interesting time right now. And it made me think also last night about Bob Thompson, and when we had him on so regularly, there's always something that bothered me with his interviews towards the end. And I never really dwelled on it too much because it's just, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But he was always very ominous in talking about how this wasn't done. Mm-hmm. And he never got specifics. He never got into specifics. But I think you'll remember of like, we'd be talking about the future and what's this look like? Is it going to settle down? He's like, he would mention, I think people are using the word like the culling of the herd, but he was talking more about, what's the proper word for it? Like more of a trimming down.
Yeah, culling.
Yeah, but that's not the word he used, but it was something along those lines. And it was very vague as to what he was talking about, because you're like, well, who would that possibly be? Oh, the ACC. Obviously, that makes some sense. But now you look back at those quotes again, and it's like, no, he knew there was even more than that going on, more outside of the ACC. And so those quotes, ominous at the time, that didn't really dig into, those are coming back into my head and making a lot more sense now. The foreshadowing, I guess, is the best word for it, because you see the trimming and the continued possibilities for even more trimming that's going on. So yeah, man, it's a wild time, and just every day brings something new. That's for sure.
Absolutely. When we come back, Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, on all of this, and Brandon Ellsbury, $5 super chat. We are going to get to that immediately following Dennis Dodd. That will kick off the discussion in the 45 segment that is coming up right after this. Some great stuff from Dennis Dodd. This is 365 Sports.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Let the journey to financial brilliance begin with Genco's limited time offers. Max your earnings with a Cassaza cash account and get paid monthly with a 4.25 APY. That's $425 annually. Then invest in a 13-month share certificate and earn 4.9 APY. That's $529. Earn cash and outshine the rest. At Genco, we offer you the sun and the moon. Cassaza based on average daily balance of $10,000. Certificate based on $10,000 investment. See GencoFCU.org for details. NCUA.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is a premier elite life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Offering over 50 group exercise classes every week, including boot camp, bar, silver sneakers, and 10 cycling classes with morning and evening classes available. New state-of-the-art bikes that allow you to compete against yourself with a screen monitoring your speed, miles, resistance, and power. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, Alex Botch, and Nathan Roach, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow, losing inches in weight the right way. There's a kids club included with your membership, plus sauna and tanning bed. 16 tennis courts, plus a beautiful stadium court, and longtime youth tennis pro Britt Coleman and assistant junior pro Kenna. Adult tennis lessons and clinics with Blake, and the commitment to pickleball with 8 courts and instructor Jody Thurman. Visit the website at wacotennis.com next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
365 Sports here on Thursday. Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, joins us now. And Dennis is covering the Big 12 tournament, and we'll talk about that in a second. But Dennis, you wrote a column about the ever-widening chasms in college football. With these latest developments of the CFP, with the ACC and Big 12 now empowering the commissioners to vote yes on the agreement and approve it, how do you feel that went down? Because I don't feel like the Big 12 or ACC really gained anything in this other than maybe nuking those automatic qualifiers and automatic buys.
Well, I think they came to a realization that, if they didn't get this done, this piece, that frankly, the SEC and Big Ten would follow through on their threat to break away. I mean, I saw that in the story a couple of weeks ago, followed up on it. Turns out it's real. It would be very inconvenient for everybody, but they would be willing to do it.
Well, they had this little joint group together about the future of college athletics, and there was really nothing that the ACC or Big 12 could have done about them doing that. It would have been naive for all of us to think no, they're really talking about everybody together and not like taking half the time to do that and half the time to go, okay, if it doesn't work out, how do we do this with just the two of us?
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, Greg Sankey, as the SEC commissioner, has been hinting and saying for years, we could stage our own playoff. Just the SEC alone be worth a lot of money. Obviously, the big rights holders would pay for it, and people would watch. But that's all it was. I thought the moment that the 12 was finalized, and that was like September of 2022. Remember that big, it was devised in 19, finalized in 22. I said the next big hurdle on this is when they get in the room and the SEC and Big Ten, or all the conferences really, start dividing up the money. And that's what's happened. But we're past that point. They've agreed to that money, which is $1.3 billion is what ESPN is going to pay. More importantly, they've agreed to how to divide that revenue, whether you think it's right or not. They've all agreed to it or are about to agree to it. SEC and ACC are supposed to vote today, I think, on it, their presidents. And so all that's left, well, not all, but is the structure and format, how they're going to play within the bracket. And that's going to be very contentious as it has been to this point.
Yeah, they, obviously the automatic qualifiers are gone, but that doesn't mean that
they're not gone.
They're not gone?
No, I don't think they're there in the form they were.
Okay.
This kind of started with 4 each for the Big Ten and SEC. Then it was 3. Then it was 3-2-2-1. I still think that's on the table. I'm led to believe that the best and the one that they'll finally decide on is 5+9, which is the 4 conference champions and the Power 4, the best group of 5 champion, and then 9 at large. Which, look, those 2 conferences still get their teams anyway, but the AQ thing in some form is still on the table.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, the 5+9 to me seems to be the best kind of medicine that the ACC and Big 12 could take, because you could. Yeah. That's the only way they're getting 3 teams in, right? The only way they could get 3 and maybe even 2 in some years is in that format, right?
Well, and I tell you what, the Big 12 is very agreeable to 3-3-2-2-1, because right now, as we sit here, they've got nothing. they've got no guarantees in the 12-team bracket, nor anything in 26, and nothing's finalized. And not to quote Fred Yormark, but I'm sure he's thinking, "Oh, we get 2 every year. Where do I sign up?"
Yeah.
I think there's a realization in the Big 12 that, the SEC and the Big 10 are clearly carry the water here in terms of interest, ratings. I mean, demographic, whatever you want to say. It's just a question of whose feelings get hurt less, and whose feelings get hurt in this, and how much people get upset. This is really going to be hard, but it's just a reflection of what football is. I don't have to tell you the numbers. I think the SEC and Big Ten accounted for 75% of the spots the last 10 years in the CFP. I went back to 1998, the beginning of the championship era with the BCS. Those two conferences, if you put in all the BCS bowls, all the CFP games, and the New Year's Six, they've accounted for 62% of the slots. So, I mean, there's your answer right there why this is happening. So, they're going to get those two. I should really mention really quick. Those two are going to split 58%. The ACC is going to get 17%. The Big 12, 15%. And what is that, 90? And then the Group of 5 and the independents, including Notre Dame, will split that last 9% or 10%.
Dennis, this kind of also highlights the FSU and ACC situation, which is more bizarre than any of the realignment situations because all the other ones kind of happen under cover of night, right, when it comes to the Power of 5. This one has been very much out in the open, and Florida State's been demonstrative about what they think their value is, even though nobody will come out and say, sure, we want them until they know what that cost is for getting Florida State. And so that means they may not have anybody that really does. Although I think that remains to be seen once it happens, but that is certainly a possibility. But with this widening revenue chasm, why would a team like Florida State not at least try to get out and get in one of those two leagues, seeing as there's really no way for the ACC and Big 12 to make this up unless they start robbing banks or stealing identities?
No, they don't. And at that point, it just becomes all about access. If we know we're not getting the, just give us the access so we have a chance. And I'll tell you what, one other thing I failed to mention in this new deal, they got rid of the participation pool, which to me is huge. They agree that the SEC and Big Ten agreed that the participation pool, for example, in, beginning this year's playoff, the 12-team playoff, top 4 had to play 4 games, fourth game being the championship game, collected a total of $20 million. If you got to that 4th game, you got $20 million, which went to the conference for distribution. But still, you got it. That's off the board. There's none of that in that respect. But going back to Florida State, they have to extricate themselves. Okay, it's almost kind of a catch-22. Well, they don't really want to extricate themselves unless they know there's a home. Well, right now, like you said, there's no home. They're not worth the pro rata to the SEC or the Big Ten, and pro rata means equal value. They're not worth $60 million which is what the SEC is getting, or $75 million, which is what the Big Ten is getting per team. Now, would they take half shares to get in? Absolutely, but why dilute the product? It's a case, Paul, of Florida State kind of overvaluing itself. If you think about it, the SEC and Big Ten now have all the rivalries really that matter in those two leagues. There's exceptions, Clemson, Florida State, Miami, Florida State, whatever. But what the market has told them is that we don't need you to do this. That's why you see the SEC and Big Ten flexing like this. We don't necessarily need you at this top level. So they're in a situation where they think they're underpaid. They can negotiate, according to documents, Tampa Times and some great reporting, and basically negotiate their way out, buy their way out, whatever that number is, and then get over to one of those conferences. I think the Big 12 would be in play for Florida State if what I said becomes true. We don't, the SEC certainly doesn't want, certainly not the top of their hit list. They're already in Florida, where they need Florida State for. Big Ten, maybe. But it's just right now, it doesn't. They've got to X themselves and let the dominoes fall where they may.
Dennis, you are in Kansas City for one of the great events in sports in the Big 12 tournament, which has now gotten bigger and will get bigger again next year. Heck, with 16 teams, it might need 2 whole weeks to do it. But there have been some interesting things that have happened. Cincinnati, of course, beating Kansas. Kansas, just in kind of the dud of their season, but of a season, the worst one under Bill Self. What do you think is the offseason like for them, and how aggressive do they get? Because they really had, it's really on their bench, but 4 misses on the bench this year.
Yeah. They took. I mean, part of it, they have such a thin bench. Part of it is they took all the penalties from the NCAA investigation this year. Is like 3 scholarships. And look, not to say they're demonstrably better if they had 3 more scholarship players on the bench. They thought they had enough on the bench. The guys they got just have the Timberlake kid. Jamari McDowell was forced to play last night. It just has not been good. So they look like a team, before I get to next season, they look like a team where if everything goes right in the draw, they could get to the Sweet 16. But I don't think they go much past that, because Hunter Dickinson is coming back, the 7-2 post. He's got a separated shoulder. They get back their leading scorer, Kevin McCullough, who has a lingering kind of bone bruise on a knee, forced him to miss 4 of the last 5 games, I think. But, to get them back and expect them to be 100%, that's kind of what Bill Self is saying. That at least stretches the floor. People have to defend Hunter Dickinson. They can shoot 3, but they're not very good at it. They're 3 of 20 last night against Cincinnati. As far as the future, I have full faith in Bill Self, just building it right back up. Now, who knows what's in the portal? I'm no expert. He'll go out and get players. He's got a just a basic recruiting class. I don't say basic. I mean, he's got a good recruiting class, but that's the basic recruiting class. And it'll be supplemented, but it'll be fine. I mean, I think the thing about this league is to see which way it goes now. It's actually gotten better. Now you import Arizona. Arizona State isn't any good, but Colorado is a top 25, kind of, to me, a consistent top 25 program every season. May not finish there, but they end up being there at one point. And Utah, I think, is very competitive. So the league just gets better. So there's that for Kansas, in addition to getting better with the roster.
What do you think the future is for Rodney Terry at Texas?
TBD. Look, I wasn't the one, but somebody made a point during the season, it may have been Jeff Goodman, never let the emotion, of filling that spot with a short space of accomplishments cloud your judgment. And I guess the question is that what happened at Texas, where they could have settled in, looked around, got a coach, but this was a Texas guy, a loyal assistant who'd been there, deserved a shot, and now I get there's questions. That's the best way to put it. I don't pretend to know what's going to happen at Texas. I assume he'll be back, but it is a cautionary tale about taking your time. I mean, there was pushback at Notre Dame when they from some alums when they hired Marcus Freeman within a week of Brian Kelly leaving. But if you remember in football, at that time, a couple of seasons ago, Notre Dame still had an outside shot to go to CFP. Mm-hmm. So they had to get something done. Turned out they didn't make it. But even though Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame was one of 2 coaches in the history of Notre Dame to win 9 games each of his first 2 seasons, there's still questions about him. So we'll see.
Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports. Dennis, thank you so much for hopping on with this short notice. Enjoy Kansas City. Get some burn ends for me.
I will. Thanks so much.
All right. Dennis Dodd, CBSSports.com with us here on 365 Sports. We're back with more right after this.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
Samantha Duvall, TexasBeefHouse.com with me, David Smoak. And tell you what, you guys keep rolling along. You do have yet another date, correct, for an online and live auction?
Yes, our next online and live auction will be Thursday, April 25th.
We've discussed how this has been unique and how people have reacted to it. Has that momentum continued as you've done more?
Yes, it's kind of half and half. We'll have a good amount of people there that are from the area, and then we have probably 40% that we ship out. And everybody that I've delivered locally to has talked about how much fun they had, and they want to know when the next one's going to be. We've gotten great feedback from the people that we've shipped to. They're all just so excited about this event, and they can't wait for the next one to happen.
Premium grade East Texas beef. Customers don't have to go out and buy their beef. TexasBeefHouse.com, from their family and their ranch to your plate. TexasBeefHouse.com.
Texas Farm Bureau Insurance has been proudly serving Texans across the state for over 60 years. Call 254-772-8090 to find an agent who will provide a free review of your auto, home, and life coverage.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at UnitePrivateNetworks.com.
We are going to get to 2 Super Chats here in a second, but just a real quick update on the Big 12 tournament. Earlier, Tech dispatched BYU with extreme prejudice, 81-67. BYU could not shoot in the first half, got their sea legs a little bit in the second half, but the damage was already done. And right now, look, what has been a fairly defensive struggle was 31-15 at halftime and started out, I believe, 18-0. Houston leads TCU 37-18 with 15 minutes left in that game so far. So Houston's not exactly lighting it up on offense, but TCU is making them not have to. So, yeah. Or they're making TCU not to have it because that's Houston's strength is defense. So, it'll be interesting to see if TCU can get back in this thing, but looks right now that Houston's only going to have to score 50 points to win this thing going away. Yeah, well, congrats to Tech on the win. BYU is a team that's very dangerous, very fun to watch when shots are falling. When they're not, man, that's a real struggle. But Tech was too much, and great win for Graham McCasland and company to move on and now face the winner of this game in the next round, TCU and Houston, which right now Houston 19-point lead. You mentioned the big start they got off to. I mean, just completely got out to a ridiculous start because TCU just unable to put any points in the bucket and trying to scrape away. But, man, down 19 and it's early second half. It's just kind of hard to see where a win's going to come from here for TCU, but did not do themselves any favors with that bad start. So, yeah, Houston in full control now, up 22, 40-18 with about 14 to play. So Houston and TCU going at it, and winner goes on to face Tech in the semifinals. And then later on, we'll get K-State, Iowa State. K-State with a nice win over Texas last night. Texas jumping out early, and then K-State with a nice rally. So big win for Jerome Tang and company. And they now play Iowa State later tonight, and then we'll see Baylor and Cincinnati after Cincinnati. We knew KU was kind of walking in like saying, hey, we're not like full strength and all of that, but Cincinnati fans don't care, man. They went and beat Kansas today and beat them convincingly. So, yes, Cincy and Baylor going to be in the next game. Yeah, we're going to move right on past that. Yeah, okay, that's fine, no, yeah. It is. Like, this was Kansas's plan, and I do worry that it'll affect their seeding a little bit. They might have dropped down a line, but maybe, yeah. I do think the committee has to consider that, like, they've played their last 2 games, which have been 2 of the biggest back-to-back blowouts in the history of Kansas basketball without their 2 best players. So yeah, I mean that has to go in. No, that has. I mean they take that into account when it's convenient. Yeah. For the football side of things,
when your quarterback's hurt or something like that, they take that into account. So, yeah, I would imagine the committee will take that into account for Kansas. But, yeah, doing themselves no favors. I mean, that was a fun win, though, for Cincinnati to go and beat KU. And a lot of teams have done that this year. It's been a wild year for Bill Self and company, but we'll see how they do in the big tourney. But, yeah, this game – 42-19 now, Houston up, and then later on tonight, like I said, K-State, Iowa State, Cincinnati, Baylor, and there's your Big 12 tourney update.
All right, let's get to some Super Chats. First off, from Brandon. Hold on, let me pull that up here so I can read it closer. I
can read it.
Okay, go ahead and read it.
Can colleges not make players 1099 employees? All the players are independent contractors, and the player and college agree on a player-by-player basis.
I think there's too many of them to do that, but maybe. I mean, and maybe that's where
that's what pro wrestling does.
Yeah.
Vince McMahon, for the longest time, pro wrestlers were independent contractors, and that was a way for him to get around a lot of things. I mean, they still had contracts and, made big money in some cases, but it's always been a profession where you operate as an independent contractor, as weird as that sounds, for the longest of times. I don't know how that changes with the new ownership with Endeavor, if it does at all or not, but yeah, I don't have a great answer to this because that's a little bit out of my pay grade. But I would think that'd be difficult with thousands of players.
Yeah, I don't think that would work. You're going to have that's going to create probably more problems than it solves because if Craig and I are both we're 1099s in actual life. We didn't have to negotiate different things for us. It was just how it works. But it is. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure that would work because you've got the quarterback that's going to negotiate this and that and the other thing. And also with a 1099, they don't have to provide insurance, which I think is a big deal in this. It's 1099, I don't have to provide you insurance. You're not a full-time employee. And maybe they can negotiate that out in a contract that you'll provide me insurance, but then I don't think everyone would get it. So guys can tear their ACLs as walk-ons in practice just as much as anything else and, need medical care beyond, their college years for those injuries sustained. So
basically to say, I don't think the players will agree to that.
No,
if they've got a union and they're going to have adults that are helping them to get to where they want to be in negotiations and things like that, I don't think the athletes, especially if this is your big first swing at the plate and you're going to have many more cuts at the plate. I think the players would be I think the colleges would be that's a win. Yeah. That's better than the alternative of you're all full-time employees. But I think the athletes and their representation would push back on that because, you want to have the health insurance and the things that come with that. So, I think that's probably the best way to answer that, Brandon.
Yeah, that's you mentioned the WWE. That's one of their biggest issues is that, guys get hurt wrestling and then.
Well, they take care of that, but I don't know all the ins and outs of it.
Later on down the line when they're not valuable to WWE anymore. And they have lasting injuries. There's something there's different, but
I mean, it's a little complicated. I mean, they've paid for people's rehabs on multiple occasions for some guys to the point of they're. Scott Hall went a billion times and he still ended up dying eventually. But, I mean, they do that. But, it's technically independent contractors, and that's how they get around a lot of things in that industry. And they're not the only ones. But, I mean, you would think that the athletes would not agree to that when they've got the hammer in their hands right now. If it was the other way and you were just trying to, get any kind of an agreement, that's probably something you'd cave to. But for the lawyers on the athlete side, I would think that, no, we're getting some health insurance and we're getting some benefits out of it. That's the whole point of this outside of just the money itself.
Yeah. Aloha Nate, if players become employees, could they negotiate things like playoff access, et cetera, so Sankey can't just dictate whatever he wants? No. I mean, because you don't know where you're going to be. Because the transfer portal exists and you become all those different things. I don't think the players will have power in that. The players don't have power in that in the NFL. The players didn't want more playoff games. The players didn't want more regular season games in the NFL. They wanted less, So when they agreed to certain things, it was they capitulated and gave in okay, another regular season game. If you take off a preseason game, which is a game that they don't get paid any extra for, all those things. Yes, you can expand the playoffs, which means more games. So I don't think that that's really how it works because the owners in this case would be the conferences and the schools. They're not going to just the players want to be in this conference. Like, no, they're just going to go where the money is.
I think the other thing, going back to the 1099 thing, is the tax part of that. And I mean, if you're athletes, you could definitely hire a tax pro, or you can do your taxes. I don't think that's the concern. But would you rather have those taken out up front and already dealt with versus having to then do that on your own as well? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think that would also be a part of your negotiating, was why you would not want to be a 1099. But yeah, whatever they decide. I don't know. I just think that when you've got the power, you're going to try to get the biggest bite that you can, and that would be full-time employee status. As far as Nate's question here, I mean, they'll be able to bargain. I mean, it all depends on how it comes together, Nate. I think that's the hard part right now, is there's not a real players union. There's not a real representation. There's a bunch of people trying to help create that. There's a lot of ideas of how that can be a thing moving forward, but it's not together yet. And so, let's say it does come together that way, and in the future there's a college football players union. I mean, what does that entail? Is that everybody, or is that the SEC and the Big Ten players and them alone? I mean, there's a few too many unanswered questions to know for sure, but I don't know how much they'd be able to negotiate playoff access. I think that would be a little out of the realm, unless you just have an association that's so deep and that you've got like literally all the players on board. Then yeah, they're going to have the ability to negotiate and be like, look, buddy, we don't want to play a 32-team playoff, or if we're going to do that, here's what we want in return. So that could be a negotiation, but I don't think that they could outright stomp that idea out ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Thank you for those.
Thank you for those super chats. When we come back, Justin Williams of The Athletic, he is in Kansas City right now at the Big 12 tournament. We'll talk Big 12 tournament with him. Also, his thoughts on the CFP and its expected expansion to 14 coming up. This is 365 Sports.
It's Dodge Power Shot Days at Allen Samuels in Waco. Experience the adrenaline-pumping performance and cutting-edge technology of Dodge. From the sleek and stylish 2023 Charger to the performance and muscle of a Challenger to the bold and rugged Durango. During Dodge Power Shot Days, we're offering amazing deals and special incentives that will make driving a new Dodge even more exhilarating. Don't miss out on these exclusive savings. Visit Allen Samuels in Waco today and unleash the power of Dodge.
Come by. Let's be friends.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak.
Welcome back to 365 Sports. Justin Williams, changed that graphic there. Justin Williams of The Athletic joins us now on 365 Sports. He is live from Kansas City. I'm sure, like as I said with Dennis Dodd we had earlier, waist deep in burn ends and basketball. Justin, so far this tournament hasn't provided a lot of surprises, but last night Kansas State knocking off Texas to keep their tournament hopes alive. I would say the Wildcats are pretty buoyed right now, aren't they?
Yeah, especially when you're kind of looking at some of these other bubble teams around the country. Wake Forest just lost. Seton Hall just lost. So, we're going to kind of see how these, metrics and resumes look in the morning. But if you're a team that is on the bubble and you're still playing by this point in the week, you're giving yourself a chance at least. So I think Kansas State still has a little bit of work to do. They have a tough game against Iowa State, but that's the team they just beat on Saturday to also kind of keep their hopes alive. So you get another big win like that, and Kansas State could be working their way into that kind of last four in, first four out discussion.
Justin, we knew that Kansas was not going to be at full strength entering the tournament, but since he goes in and beats them down 72-52, now it's Cincinnati and Baylor coming up later on tonight. Your thoughts on the Bearcats showing, and obviously, Kansas dealing with some things right now, but that's a big win for the Bearcats, and just how do you unpack what it all means?
Yeah, I mean, on the Kansas side, you're right. You're talking about two first-team All-Big Ten players and Dickinson and McCullough who are out, I think over 30 points combined per game. So you don't necessarily expect them to come out and beat a Cincinnati team that struggled this year, sure, but has been competitive and has been in games. They actually played a full-strength Kansas pretty tough out in Lawrence earlier in the year. So, the bigger thing, this is something my colleague CJ Moore wrote about for the Athletics today, is that Kansas can't shoot the ball. When they get healthy and those two guys are in, they're going to look a lot better, but they've struggled all year shooting the ball, and you saw that last night. They were 3 for 20 on three-pointers, and just, there were some moments where they could have gotten back into that game and even had some good looks and couldn't knock them down. On the Cincinnati side, again, same thing. Give them credit. They're keeping their season alive. They're keeping their tournament hopes alive. This is a team that so many times, has had a lead or been in games late and just couldn't kind of get over that hump. It's their first season in the Big 12. They had some new pieces. So maybe this is just a sign of, even against a depleted Kansas team, maybe they're starting to turn a little bit of a corner. Maybe they're getting a little bit of momentum. Now, again, easier said than done. You get Baylor tonight. It's a team that you can just, constantly throw really athletic, talented wings at you. I think it's going to be a much tougher task than that depleted Kansas team. But like we said, same thing we said with Kansas State. If you can keep playing at this point in the week, you give yourself a chance that a lot of other teams are losing. So big win against Baylor, and suddenly Cincinnati, who was, completely on the outside looking in, not even in the bubble discussion entering the tournament, all of a sudden they're now kind of working their way back into the mix as well.
What would you say is the simplest path forward for Cincinnati? Like or the minimum that they have to do to make the tournament?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting if they can beat Baylor tonight. It'll be interesting to see where the rest of these bubble teams kind of fall the rest of the night. Colorado, Utah play tonight. That's a big one. Ohio State, Iowa play tonight. That's another big one. I'm not saying Cincinnati would be in if they beat Baylor, but if some of these other games break right for them, maybe they're a little bit closer than they expected. And then it also depends on what happens to Kansas State, Iowa State. If Iowa State beats Kansas State and then Cincinnati goes out and beats Iowa State on Friday, then I think you're really like, all right, the Bearcats, they made it to the Big 12 championship game, and now they're right back in it. They're probably earned themselves a spot in kind of that last four in. So it's, this point in the day, this point in the week, it's a little bit too much up in the air. But again, if they can win, they're at least put themselves in a much better position than a lot of other teams that are fighting for the same spot.
Justin, just big picture with the Bearcats, what have been your thoughts just seeing this first foray into the Big 12? And I know there's still some stories or pages left to be written this season potentially, but just kind of what has been your thoughts on this experience, the competition, the road trips, all those things, but also looking forward, what do you think is kind of maybe the most glaring thing or two about what needs to be worked on or improved?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple things. One, if you're a Cincinnati fan and you can kind of step back and remove yourself from some of the tough losses or games they could have had, they've been competitive pretty much in every single game in Big 12 play. And for a team that, has really kind of had to rebuild and fight its way back the past couple of years, even in the American Conference the last 2 years under Wes Miller, for them to come out and I think, kind of compete the way they did in the Big 12, that's encouraging if you're looking at the long-term trajectory of Wes Miller in the program. So, I think that as much as it might be tough to look at that at the moment right now, that's a good sign for Cincinnati moving forward. They need a wing who can score. That's what they're going to be after in the transfer portal this offseason. A guy like Smoak, who's played really well here the past 2 games in Kansas City, they kind of tried to make him the number 1 option, and I think that was a lot to put on his shoulders this year. And so, I give Cincinnati credit in terms of the way they built the roster from a defensive standpoint, rebounding standpoint. They've been one of the best defensive teams in the country this year. I think what they realized in the Big 12, though, is it's not just good enough to be a good defensive team. Like, you got to have a bucket getter. You got to have some guys who, when things break down, because there are other good defenses in this league who you can give the ball to and have something create. And so I think they probably learned a lot from their experience this first year. I'm interested to see, no matter how it ends, the rest of the week here, interested to see how they kind of adjust and what, pointers they take from the season in terms of how they build it for next year.
Justin, what has been the scuttlebutt around the open coaching jobs now? Mike Boynton at Oklahoma State and West Virginia with their interim situation now ending.
Yeah, so West Virginia, Josh Eilert was kind of, everyone expected that to open up to a full search. I think there's a couple interesting names to watch. Kearns, who's the coach over at Appalachian State, had a really good year in the Sun Belt. I think he's obviously already kind of in that region, understands what it takes to recruit to that area. They play good defense. I think that's something that West Virginia is looking for, is another defensive-minded coach. But also, maybe you're West Virginia and you wonder, all right, where's Dusty May going to go? Everyone talks about Ohio State. It looks like Indiana's not opening up. If things kind of shake out and Dusty May is still at FAU and no one's kind of poached him, maybe you're West Virginia and you try and take a run at him and just kind of see how that goes. Oklahoma State, it's another one. It's Stillwater, right? It's kind of, you have to understand what that area is like and how to recruit to it. We've seen that Mike Boynton has been able to get players there. They just haven't always translated to success on the court. I wonder if Nico Medvedev over at Colorado State, he's a guy who's had a lot of success in the Mountain West. He's kind of a name that maybe he likes it there. Maybe he wants to stay there, but maybe you kind of kick the tires and make someone like that tell if you're Oklahoma State.
I want to ask you kind of a 2-part question here about a couple of different topics that came out of Brett Yormark's address with the media. One, your thoughts on establishing Kansas City, continuing on with the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City as it has been for a while now. Your thoughts on that, just as the conference continues to grow and bring in parts from all over the country, and also what are your overall thoughts on the expanded March Madness ideas that are being floated around right now?
Yeah, as far as KC, look, Brett Yormark has shown that he's not against kind of changing things up. They're having football media days in Las Vegas for the next season, and that's something that's been in Dallas. So he's clearly, if it were an opportunity that I think you want to pursue, I think he would. They've tried some different places in the Big 12, I know, in the past. For Kansas City, my guess, I don't obviously know the details of the financials of the situation. I'm guessing that Kansas City and T-Mobile Center kind of, definitely made it worth their while to stay here. And when you're a conference tournament, part of it is you want to sell tickets, right? Kansas is 40 minutes down the road. This wasn't Kansas's year in the Big 12 tournament, clearly, but I think you always know that there's going to be a good Kansas contingent. We've seen Iowa State have success this year. They travel here really well. Kansas State's another one. So, I think maybe in the future there was some sense that they could try some different places with the four corner schools coming in. But I also think it made a lot of sense, especially if they could get the things they want, to keep it here in Kansas City. It was just from, my perspective of someone flying in, really easy city to navigate. And plenty of, good barbecue to give me the meat sweats. I'm not against that. For the tournament, Brett Yormark said the quiet part out loud, right? If the tournament expands to 76 teams, that probably helps the Big 12. Teams like Kansas State and Cincinnati who are fighting on the bubble this year, they probably get in a 76 team tournament. So I don't know that I necessarily like it as someone who's a basketball fan and watching the NCAA tournament and all these fans out there that are looking at the bubble this year and being like, man, these kind of underachieving power conference teams, we're just going to give them a little, freebie walk to a playing game or something like that. I totally get that perspective, but Brett Yormark is the commissioner of the Big 12, and if this is going to help the Big 12, then I think it totally makes sense why he would come out and say that he understood the benefits and was in favor of it.
What do you think about Greg Sankey essentially saying that, they need to look at taking away automatic qualifiers for the one-bid leagues?
Yeah, this is, again, kind of a similar situation. Greg Sankey's the SEC commissioner. So, yeah, he has a ton of power. It's the best conference in terms of football and holds the most power that way. But when Greg Sankey comes out and says these things and people get mad at him or whatever, he's not the commissioner of the NCAA or the college football playoff. He's going to work in the best interest of the SEC. So sure, I might not always like or agree with some of the things he says, but he's working on behalf of his members, his constituents. And so, of course, he's going to kind of work in their best interest. I think what we saw it a little bit, or at least heard behind the scenes when there was talk about 14-team playoff and the Big Ten and SEC getting those automatic buys. Like apparently there was, a lot of, people, a lot of member institutions that stood up and kind of pushed back against that. Doesn't sound like that's going to happen. I think for something like whatever Greg Sankey mentions these ideas, for those things to not kind of come to fruition, you're going to have a lot of people band together within the NCAA, within these institutions, and let them know why they don't want that to happen. Unfortunately, as we've seen over the history of the NCAA, it's kind of been tough to get unified voices and some centralized leadership. So I don't necessarily agree with Greg Sankey on that, but I also understand why he's saying what he's saying.
Justin, we don't know about half of the bracket right now. We know that Texas Tech has advanced over BYU and Houston right now in full control over TCU. So I guess we'll let those other two games later on tonight play out. But what do you think about a Tech-Houston matchup in the semis of the Big 12 tournament?
Yeah, I mean, based on today, probably first team to 40 is going to win that game tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
I think it was 16-0. Houston started out against TCU. When I came down here to start talking to you guys, TCU was like 0 for 10 from 3-point range. I don't know if they've hit one yet or not. But and Texas Tech, like BYU, everyone knows that team can get hot. They can shoot it from three, and then Tech did a good job of for the most part today of just kind of clamping down. So. Those are two really good teams. Houston obviously has been kind of the class of the conference all season long. But if anyone's coming out for that game tomorrow in Kansas City, I would not expect to be like a barn burner. I would take the under for sure.
Justin, what are your thoughts on the college football playoff expansion that is on the way? The Big 12 and ACC, everybody appears set to vote on it. It could happen by tomorrow that we know what the format's going to be. What do you think about the decisions that have been made there?
Yeah, Brett Yormark's been very present here the first couple of days of the Big 12 tournament. I have yet to see him today. Now, maybe he's out sampling the barbecue of Kansas City, but it sounds like he might have some other things going on. But, I'm sure you guys have talked about it a ton. Like, what's frustrating, for me as a fan of the sport and someone who's covering it, is it seemed like the 12-team playoff, like that actually had college football fans excited. There seemed to be some people taking concessions on either side in terms of automatic qualifiers at large, and even Notre Dame's willing to say, hey, we might not get a bye, but we'll kind of go along with this. And before, obviously that goes back to before the SEC took Texas and Oklahoma, and that kind of screwed the whole thing up. But, now before we even get to the 12-team playoff, we have a 14-team playoff, and we're talking about, model 3-3, 2-2, 1-1, whatever models and automatic, spots and things like that. And it's just a little bit frustrating to see. It almost felt like college football had kind of, in spite of itself, stumbled into something that fans were excited about. And before we even get there, now we're talking 14 and a bunch of these changes. So I'm a hypocrite because I'm going to watch it and I'm going to cover it. And, I think a lot of people, like us probably feel the same way. But I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a little disappointing that before we even got to something new and kind of exciting, we're finding a way to change it all over again.
I cannot imagine, like, college football is like a restaurant that's like always been kind of good. And then they like stumble across like a menu item that everybody loves. And like, whoa. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to make a pizza out of it. You're like, no, I like the thing. You had it. Don't go too far. Just stop.
You're right. They kind of stumbled into something that worked for them. And they're like, hey, you guys, you think you might like this? What if we go ahead and screw it up real quick, just as you were getting used to it? So, again, maybe I'm wrong, and I'm going to watch it, and I think a lot of people will. But it seems like there was some like actual excitement and momentum among fans who can be a little frustrated about this stuff, understandably, with college football, and they found a way to kind of give us something new that I'm not sure anyone was asking for.
Absolutely. Justin Williams of The Athletic. Justin, enjoy the rest of your time in Kansas City, one of the great basketball tournaments you can go to.
Absolutely. Always appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you.
Justin Williams of The Athletic here with us on 365 Sports. And yeah, I mean, like, he's right. Like, we're a bit of a hypocrite. So we're like, we're going to watch it. We're going to cover it. We're going to do that. But like, again, I don't have to like the medicine. I just have to take it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll watch it. I think it all depends on what it looks like on the other end, though. about how much I'm watching and what exactly I'm watching. I'm not. I never signed a lifetime contract in blood that I got to be a hardcore college sports fan my whole life. So we'll see where this thing takes us. But yeah, right now I'm still all in and patiently waiting to see what the end of the road looks like, and whatever that is, the trademark Super 2 or some other mutant version of what we have now. But I do see like the sort of the I guess the hypocritical side, but yeah, I mean that's part of just trying to. I think everybody's just trying to wrap their head around it, Paul. Like everything's happening like every day. It's like, oh, it's this format, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this, and it's like we haven't even had time to really process one thing, much less 5 things, and so. I don't think everybody's dealing with like a full deck of cards at the moment, you know? Mm-hmm. And so maybe we get to a point where things are in place the way that they're meant to be in place, and then you actually move on from that, and we can see how many people are still hypocritical at that point. But right now, it's hard not to be hypocritical because like you don't even know what's going on or what it's going to look like. So yeah, part of me is feeling a little bit torn on it all. But right now, it's still the sport I love the most, college football in particular, and college basketball is close by there as well. And, if there's a time that it's a lot different looking, then check in on me in a year or two or maybe even longer. I guess it all just depends on the higher-ups and what they want, and maybe I'm less of a fan at that point. But for right now, I'm still, I guess, dealing with the hard part of sort of navigating what exactly I think about it, and I guess in some ways can stumble into hypocrisy from time to time.
I'm less of a fan of the NBA than I was 20 years ago.
I think everybody is.
Yeah, I mean, like,
based on a lot of things.
I mean, especially people our age are, because
the regular season just, I mean, I don't know how much it ever really mattered, but like it truly just does not matter. Like it really, I mean, it does to the extent that you have seeds, but they've so gussied up the playoff format, in-season tournament. Like they've done so many gimmicks that it's not even what we watched. I mean, in a lot of ways, the athletes are incredible. Anybody who says like they couldn't hang with Jordan, like bull S, dude. That's what you do when you get older. Is like just like my parents like Jordan couldn't have tangled with Bill Russell. It's like yes, he freaking could have.
Look, I think what's different is that the lower end of the NBA guys. Like now wouldn't work, right? Like
I just think people are kind of turned off by the lack of caring by the players themselves.
Exactly, but like I think that's the difference. That like, would Bill Wennington be a championship center now? Probably not. But
probably not, yeah.
Like those kind of things would be different. But Michael Jordan's great anytime. Right, look, if Babe Ruth was alive right now, he'd still maybe be the greatest hitter who ever lived. He probably wouldn't party as hard, or they would maybe make him take better care of himself. Theoretically, but like those kind of things happen. I think, and the biggest thing is you're right. The players don't care as much about the regular season, because I know when I was 16 years old and I turned on to watch Bulls versus Knicks, all the starters were playing in that game. Like I wasn't you had to be hurt to not play in the game. So or you had to be Dennis Rodman and still stuck in Vegas or something like that. But other than that, like, I knew that if I was going to watch, Reggie Miller, like the Jazz and the Pacers, I was going to see Reggie Miller and John Stockton and Karl Malone playing that game. Now, if I want to watch Warriors-Lakers, there's a good chance I'm not watching anybody I wanted to turn on and watch that game for because of where it falls. Now, the NBA did kind of screw that up with their stupid scheduling and the way they make guys play back-to-back nights and all that they hate. So there's been a bit of this backlash, and the best they can do is, like, you have to suit up for a national television game. Yeah, but that's why. But like, you don't have to be in love with something forever. Sometimes I
mean, I don't have to be a fan of the Commanders and just grit my teeth because Daniel Snyder can do whatever he wants, and I just have to, like, I tattooed on my head, I have to be a Commanders. No, people can change their minds. So I think if you're the powers that be in college sports, getting back to the point here, is that you're weighing the odds of, like, do we make enough moves that we turn people away, that it's a significant number that actually hurts us, or are we banking on the fact that the inclusion of these said number of schools that we've hand chosen are going to be more than adequate enough, and we're not going to see any fall off at all? And I think right now you're seeing that they're clearly going with the latter, that they don't feel like excluding Team A, B, C, or whatever is going to have an effect on their bottom line. And so long as it doesn't, then they're going to, cull it till it gets to a point where it would hurt them. And And I think that's what we're in the process of seeing. And, the proof will be in the details. Everybody said they were going to stop watching or not everybody. I hate kind of doing that. A lot of people said a few years ago they were going to stop watching the NFL. Bull. That didn't happen. Yeah. That didn't happen. If anything, you bought a bunch of buddies and you all had your own individual TVs because the ratings only went up. But college football fans are saying a lot of things right now. I'll stop watching. I'll do this if this A, B, C, D happens. And let's see if A, B, C, D happens. And maybe A's already happened and maybe B has as well. But you'll have somebody quickly point out that the ratings are as good as ever. And I think those at the very top are banking that that's always going to be the case. If anything, maybe even banking that it'll be even stronger if you get rid of some of the others. And so to what extent, I don't want to fearmonger and make every day like it's the coming apocalypse of college sports, but there are a lot of signs that could be around the corner. And I guess it's just your own prerogative on whether you think it's the death knell to the sport you love or whether it's not. And if it is, then people, have the option to stop watching, and they can vote with their remotes and with their pocketbooks.
I personally think and have always thought that the people who said that they stopped watching the NFL said that they said that so they could look cool in front of their friends.
I don't know.
That was like I'm mad about it too. And you're like, well, I mean, it's.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I never was one that went that route, but I won't make any proclamations about my future college football viewing. The point of it all is there's a lot of changes going on, and I think ultimately you're like, well, they're going to exclude half the country. Well, I think that they don't really care, and I think that they've said and shown and will continue to show that that's not really a concern of theirs, and that losing a few 100,000 people here and there is not going to affect the bottom line all that much. Whether that's correct or not, that's the big gamble, and we'll see how that plays out, and we'll be here to commentate on it along the way so long as God allows us to.
All right, when we come back, more of this, and then after that, Craig Smoak's top five. Craig Smoak's Off the Radar. That's coming up. Going to leave him one more time for that because I'm very curious on he's done some research on the Cowboys and their whiffs.
Yeah, let's talk about Mike Boynton real quick, though.
Yeah, let's talk about Mike Boynton in the next segment.
All right, let's come back and talk about Mike Boynton.
Come back and talk about that next. This is 365 Sports.
Looking to connect with Baylor alums in your area? Baylor Alumni can help. Looking to host a watch party in your city? Baylor Alumni can get you started. Want to step out in your community and serve with other alums? Baylor Alumni is your connection with the university and each other. Let's get started. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Thank you for calling your local Marco's Pizza. We're turning up the heat with our new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Fresh, house-made dough is topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers. At only $5.99, this limited-time product is a hot deal. Add it to your order while you can. A Marco's team member will be with you shortly.
Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it, and that offer on the Reaper Cheesy Bread is available right now at any of the 5 Marco's Pizza locations in Waco, including Belmead, China Spring, Robinson, Woodway, and Hewitt. Order online at marcos.com. Call for a pickup or delivery. Marco's Pizza is turning up the heat with their all-new Reaper Cheesy Bread with fresh, hot, house-made dough topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers, and only $5.99 and for a limited time only. Marco's Pizza, the fastest-growing pizza brand in America, 5 locations in Waco, and the new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, PettyClinicLowT.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, Garrett Ross, and Emery Winter in studio. Smokey is off for the next couple of days. And Jack McKenzie, I believe, is he, Garrett, the best man in this wedding?
I'm not sure if he's the best. I believe he's some. I
He's
know
a groomsman because
but I'm not sure if he's the best man or not.
He was trying to plan the bachelor party.
Right, yeah.
They went to New Orleans for the bachelor party, which is something, it's funny. The thing about bachelor parties is when you're 20s, you get one. When you're 43,
I never got one.
You don't get one. You didn't get one.
I never got one.
You never got one?
I never got a bachelor party. We never had a honeymoon. I didn't get none of that, man.
Oh, I mean, that's bogus, man.
I know. Tell me about it.
Yeah.
It happens.
By the way, $4.99 super chat from Kim Coulter. Craig absolutely brought it today. # greatness.
Oh, thank you,
Kim.
Appreciate that.
But I want to get to Mike Boynton here. Craig, you brought it up.
I want to get to actually Mike Boynton, and I should have actually teased it better because I think the more interesting story for some people might be Scott Drew, but we can get to that part too.
Let's talk about Mike Boynton and Scott Drew. I still don't think Scott Drew is going anywhere.
Well, we can talk about it, so let's go Mike Boynton first.
Mike Boynton, look, this is a guy who got on the wrong side of the NCAA here. They got punished. Nobody else really did. And then after that point, he just couldn't get. This is a dude got Cade Cunningham on the roster. He was recruiting really, really well.
Clearly, the biggest moment for that program during his run was the whole Cade Cunningham saga. Yeah. I mean, the roller coaster that was, but ultimately landing him and getting him, that was a big feather in the cap of Mike Boynton.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's been let go today. Oklahoma State has to go. And look, part of the reason he's been let go is after the last couple of years, the NIL, the boosters just were not enthusiastic about supporting him anymore. I don't think they wanted to give any more money to help him get through the storm, and they just wanted a different leader, which I think Mike Boynton, like if you're DePaul, hire Mike Boynton right now, you're probably going to win. That's what I think, because I think he's a damn good basketball coach and just found his way on the bad end of a situation. But, there's two current open jobs in the Big 12 right now. And one of them is West Virginia. The other one is Oklahoma State. And West Virginia we knew was coming. Oklahoma State, you could kind of maybe see it coming if they didn't improve this year. But he just didn't have the horses anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I really wanted to touch on this because, I mean, we talk a lot about the Big 12 headlines, and we touched on it there with Justin in the last segment. But I just wanted to kind of reset with that because that's obviously a big piece of news. And we have Oklahoma State fans that watch us. So I think for some today is a celebration. And then for some, you feel bad for the guy and feel like maybe in some cases like the NCAA tournament ban that you got the raw end of the deal, just the way that worked out initially. And I think he'll be fine in the long run, but I definitely think Oklahoma State had to do something, man. It was just it was a leaky faucet that wasn't getting any better, or leaking tire, and at some point the other tires started to leak air, and you were just rolling on rims, basically. Mm-hmm. I mean, you went 21-15 in year number one, close to 500 in the Big 12, then big drop down in 2018, 12-20, 5-13, bounced back a little bit the following year, but these last couple of years, I mean, you went 20-16, and we know that the thoughts were like, hey, maybe you can get something going, but this year 12-20, I mean, so 21-15, 12-20, 18-14, 21-9, 15-15, 20-16, 12-20, and really the most concerning mark is that this was the lowest, or this was the worst record in Big 12 play since year number 2 for you. Well, you're in year 7. I mean, it's not like this was a flash in the pan. They hired him a couple of years ago. It didn't work out. Things went sideways. He's lost too much, and you're moving on. It's at 7 years, Paul. I mean, 7 years, and they were 4-14 in the Big 12. That's the alarming stat, because that is his worst mark since going 5-13 in year 2. So finished 12-20 overall that year as well. But yeah, you're in year 7 with year 2 results, and nothing to really show for these 7 years ultimately. I mean, you know, I guess a thing here and there, you know, Cade Cunningham, a draft pick, a win here and there. But I just feel like this is one of those, the writing was on the wall, and we all knew this was coming. It's just a matter of when, not if. And so to make it official, I think, is what we all expected. And now I expect Oklahoma State to go and hire a really good basketball coach and somebody who's going to get that program back on track. But I do like Mike Boynton, and I think you could be right in that he goes somewhere else and establishes himself and has a good run there, and maybe even finds himself back in the Big 12 or wherever, you know, in a power conference, Big 10, ACC, SEC, if we even call them those labels anymore. But you know what I mean. He finds himself back on the same level eventually, or maybe he finds a job, you know, somewhere in the Colonial or something. I don't know, and does well there. But yeah, I don't think we've heard the last of him as a coach. But it was obvious that Oklahoma State, it was time that they needed to make a move for the sake of the program.
Yeah, absolutely. And with Scott Drew, the Louisville rumors will persist until he doesn't take that job.
Right.
And the rumor right now is that they're prepared to make him the 3rd highest paid coach in the country behind Calipari and Bill Self.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the 3rd highest paid coach, $8.5 million a year. I don't know. That's random tweets that I was combing through. But I do think, yeah, the longer it goes on, the more that you'll have the side that feels like he's leaving that will get fed more and more by the fact that there's not been a big declaration of I'm staying or anything along those lines. And so, hey, he hasn't said no. That means that there's a chance. And with each passing day, you can feel how that side of the coin would feel as though their chances are only getting better rather than worse. And on the Baylor side of things, I know there's a lot of people that are of the belief that there's no chance he's leaving. Why leave what you built here? 20 years, new arena, all those different types of things. And so, the faith aspect of it as well, the draft picks, I mean, really everything's rolling for him. Even the attendance, which was not something that worked in Baylor's favor, has seemingly been cured by the new arena. Now, that doesn't change the amount of people that travel on the road with you. And yes, he would have more Louisville fans traveling. He would have more fans at the home arena on a nightly basis. If his decision boils down to more fans, then that's just something Louisville has on, like, just naturally. Like, there's nothing Baylor can counteract that with. They're not going to suddenly overnight go from a school of 15,000 at their peak to 35,000, like a lot of the universities or higher that they compete against. So if that's something that points them in that direction, I could see that being an advantage for Louisville. But I saw like a Fox Sports video or something today, and the whole idea behind him leaving was that it's just getting tougher in the Big 12. And I can't remember where I saw it from originally, and I just thought that was the dumbest argument for why he would leave Baylor, is because the path is getting too hard in the Big 12. And it's like, you mean the league where they're getting like 8 teams in and they're pretty soon going to have like 9 or 10 making it every year? I mean, I guess if his goal is to just win conference championships, then maybe going to Louisville and playing Duke and North Carolina and those schools, in your eyes, is a more appealing route to go. I don't know. I don't think he's scared of competition. I think he likes the strength of the Big 12. I don't think it's a negative, and I certainly don't think that would be the reason to go. I think the reasons to go would be the size of the fan base, and I don't think the money so much would be a factor. But if you start climbing up into $8.5, $9, $10 million, whatever, then I could see where that starts to add on to maybe the crowd sizes. And I think, for me, ultimately, why I'm not going to predict one thing one way or the other, I feel like, just based on everything we know, he's going to remain at Baylor. It would be shocking, but we've been shocked before. So I'm not ruling it out like there's 0% chance of it happening. I'm also not predicting it's going to happen. I don't know, because I'm not Scott Drew, and I feel like this all boils down to, what does he want to do with the rest of his career in life? If he is of the opinion that he's done all he can possibly do, and he just wants a new challenge in a new city with new all around him, then I can see where Louisville is absolutely appealing and why that's a job that you would flock to. But if he wants to still maintain the legacy that he's built here and feels like there's more to do and maybe another championship to win and he wants to be a lifer, then that's ultimately what he'll go with. We know there's been tons of schools that have come at him over the years, right? I mean, I don't know what the total number would be, but I would think like a dozen schools. I mean, easily you could say at this point it probably gauged his interest over the years, if not more than that, and he has stayed put. But I won't pretend to know his motivation, and only Scott Drew and his family know what he really wants. And so, there's enough fodder out there to feel like Louisville is a direction that he could go, and there's enough certainly in the Baylor side of things to believe that there's little to no chance of that happening. And look, man, I'm not going to pretend to know one way or the other, but I would place my bet on him staying at Baylor, but I can understand as the days go by of why Louisville fans starts to go, ooh, he still hasn't said anything yet.
Look, you still have at least a week until he's available to even talk about it. And he's also crazy not to have his agents, get him more money here by saying, I could go to Louisville. And, I just think that there have been other times where he could have left and didn't. That make more sense than now.
Sure.
Because look, he's going to have to do another rebuild at Louisville. And it probably won't take as long because the transfer portal exists that it did when he got here. But
it's certainly NIL and all that.
Yeah,
they're bringing him in to load him up right away. Yeah.
Yeah. But the grass is not always greener.
Exactly.
And the thing I will say is, everything about this program is his.
Yep.
The stadium is his. He built it with his blood, sweat, and tears. That man built this program. Louisville will never be his program unless he he's got to win more than Denny Crum and Rick Pitino and all those other guys that have come before him. This is his program.
Mm-hmm.
He built it. It is absolutely his. That stadium does not get built if he doesn't win the national championship.
No.
It doesn't happen.
No.
It does not happen. It does not get built if they don't win that. And he knew that's what he had to do to get what he wanted, and he got it. And he proved that he could win here. And that's why I don't think – and the other thing is, it was getting built – he just close to it. I guess it was announced before they won it. They knew they were getting it because Mulkey was going to be here at the time. But I do think that without telling gossipy tales, that Kim Mulkey not being the women's basketball coach has made it much easier on the men's program.
Yep.
In a lot of regards.
Yep.
Nikki Collin is much more in as a teammate of growing basketball at Baylor and not just one side of it.
Not quietly steaming in the corner that the men just won a national title because now that's the tension being taken away from you in your program.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because that's why she left. That's why she left. Because she was no longer the queen bee. So that now all exists is that they're going in there. He's got a great situation here.
Yes.
This is where he wants to be. His dad, you can't tell me Homer wasn't offered a bunch of jobs too.
Oh, sure.
So he comes from a line of someone who's he was at a place for a long time. And that's in his blood. Now, look, if Louisville can money whip him to the point where he would give all that up, again, I'm never going to get offered $8.5 million to do something, so I don't know how I would react. But I would just tell you, I'm like you. If I've got to push all my chips in on one side, I'm pushing it to there.
I'm pushing it in on him being a lifer at Baylor, yeah. And I wanted to just talk about this because I've seen so much Louisville fodder and so many different reactions to this, and we haven't even touched on the faith aspect of it all. Yeah. And I know that Louisville's not without faith. It's just a different ballgame at Baylor. So the money, the arena, the results, the recruiting, the faith aspect, the fingerprints all over the program that is truly yours and no one else's. I mean, the guaranteed rest of his days being spent being the greatest basketball coach of all time at that school. All of that's amongst the reasons why, I'd push my chips in on him being at Baylor. And I think Louisville's an attractive job for a lot of the reasons people outlined, their history and the NIL money they feel like they have that Baylor can't compete with. I don't know about that, quite frankly, because I know that they're pretty invested now. Maybe you have a couple more million that you could go get another guy that he can't get here. I don't know. But is that enough to sway all those other things that I mentioned? I don't think so. But, Paul, the reason I talked about this the way that I did is because truly the decision-making will be just what is his desire. And I am not going to pretend as many things as we can check on the one side of like faith, check, money, check, recruiting, check, arena, check. I mean, check. I don't know what he wants in life. So that's what it's going to boil down to, and that's not trying to, be vague, but I've said it. I think he's staying at Baylor for a variety of different reasons. I can understand why the Louisville job's attractive, and if he were to take that job here in the next few days or whatever, then that would be a sign that he feels like, hey, he needs a new challenge, and he wants to try something new. And I can't possibly predict that because I don't know him nearly well enough to know those kinds of desires. So without that piece of information, I feel pretty good about Baylor basketball and its future, but I can't account for that wild card. So until he speaks on it, you are going to open the door, for better or worse, to a lot of speculation. So the speculation is on fire, and a lot of back and forth that I've seen between Louisville fans, Baylor fans, and people in between, and it'll be fascinating to see who the Cardinals eventually do get. But yeah, this is a guy who has made an incredible impact here in this town, and I know a lot of people are on pins and needles, even if they are fully a belief, because until it's like official, you're going to have that sleeping with one eye open kind of a feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, Craig Smoak's Off the Radar. This is 365 Sports. Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely, and I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
Pioneer Steel & Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel & Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel & Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
Alan Samuels House of Travel is a full-service travel agency with highly experienced travel consultants plus support staff with over a combined 150 years in the travel business. They are ready to take care of any travel situation for you, your family, and your business, and with the kind of knowledge to complete a seamless itinerary trip start to finish. They will search for the best deal to accommodate your budget from air to cars, ship to shore, hotel, and even meeting space. Name a destination and they've been there. They know the places to go, and international and missionary travel is one of their unique specialties. Alan Samuels House of Travel, celebrating 50 years in business. Call Connie, Sherry, Linda, or Bambi at 254-776-2560 or find them on Facebook or at houseoftravelwaco.com.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
All right, welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports. And you had a note, Paul, that I think you want to pass that along about the coaching hire, not the one that we were just talking about.
No.
Although that would have been great timing.
But I did just throw out, like, DePaul, you need a coach, a mid-major program.
Yeah.
They'll hire Mike Boynton. Well, they were well ahead of me in hiring their coach. It's not going to be Mike Boynton. It is Chris Holtman, who just got fired at Ohio State, is now on his way to DePaul in Chicago, which has had some nice basketball runs in the past. There you go. So Chris Holtman is at DePaul.
So there you have that, and that is one job that is now filled up. And wanted to get into a little bit of NFL free agency here, as Paul has been growing impatient, like a lot of Cowboys fans, with a lack of free agency activity. And it's understandable because the Cowboys were not making big moves as the free agency period kicked off. And in fact, we're watching as the Eagles and the Commanders and the Giants, all teams within their own division, started to make big-time moves. And now that's changed a little bit. We're starting to get a little bit of activity from those good old Dallas Cowboys, Paul, as a couple of free agents have now signed. And one of those was a guy that was expected to be headed elsewhere, but linebacker Eric Kendricks is now a member of the Dallas Cowboys. Originally had agreed to another deal, but reverses course. And so we were talking about linebacker yesterday, and we're talking about the the Commanders picking up Bobby Wagner. And why didn't Dallas kick the tires, or did they kick the tires, or what was the deal with that? Well, Eric Kendricks, how are you feeling about the Cowboys getting on the board in free agency?
I like that. I like that hire. He knows Mike Zimmer's defense, so I think they still need to add one more veteran at that position, quite honestly. Look, and I'm interested to see Damone Clark maybe improve under a different system. Marquise Bell probably moves back to safety, because I don't think they're going to bring back Jaron Kearse, because they have some depth at that position now through the draft. They also re-signed Jordan Lewis, who had a really good season last year, 1-year deal. So that's good. You know, like it's fine. I just, like, the big stress is that I don't want them to make 5 huge moves. I think that's kind of silly. But they do have some gaps, and they need to be more aggressive than they have been, and maybe make one big move, somebody who can help get you over the top. And because they don't have a whole lot of draft picks. They don't have a 4th round pick. They have a late 5th round pick. So most of their picks are in the 7th round, to be quite honest with you. So. They're
guys who aren't likely to make the team.
Yeah, so you can, if they get a 5th round guy that's going to wind up starting for them, great. That would be a real diamond in the rough. But honestly, what you can kind of count on is 1st and 2nd round guys starting. 3rd round guys not necessarily. But you want your 1st rounder to be able to start, and maybe your 2nd rounder, but. We'll see. I just think that they've got problems that need to be filled through free agency, and the draft is going to have to be maybe a more developmental thing.
Yeah, so I just I was looking around for a bundle of headlines or just off-the-cuff stories, off-the-radar stories, obviously, and didn't really have a lot of that was really tickling my fancy too much. Like the other day, we talked a bit about the boxing super fights that are the side shows, like Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, and we dabbled in a little bit of that. But I want to just focus on the Cowboys here, and I want to give credit to Bob Sturm at the Ticket in Dallas, because I was driving home the other day, and he was doing a similar exercise. And so it's not like some brand new idea that nobody's ever heard of, reading names off of a list, but it just inspired me to do this with you, knowing that it was just going to be us two today, because you have been so vocal in your displeasure of the Dallas Cowboys and their free agent signing. So I wanted to start off and just go over the list of free agents. Let's see how really bad this is, or whether it's been a little bit blown out of proportion for the last 5 years, shall we? So I'm going to start off with 2020, so it's not quite 5 years. I'll go back to 2019 depending on time here, but I want to just at least get like a 4-year stretch in here. So 2020, you're dealing with COVID. Let's keep that in mind. So there was a part of what was otherwise or what would become a very interesting year in sports. But do you remember who their big signee was in 2020, their biggest free agent signing?
It was a safety. He got cut before the season started.
No.
Okay.
It was Gerald McCoy.
Oh, yeah. Who didn't play
Who would never end up playing for them. He was their biggest free agent signing. 3 years, $18.3 million. That was their big splash, and he went on to do what for the Dallas Cowboys?
Nada.
Not a dadgum thing because of injury and just never got into playing for the Cowboys, and so he was their big signee.
Was he a COVID opt-out too?
Andrew Billings was. I remember that. Yeah. I don't remember about Gerald McCoy exactly. He might have been. I know that when I remember reading a lot about him and his family during the Oklahoma recruitment. He was an Oklahoma guy, but when Oklahoma was recruiting him, I remember reading a lot about how close he was to his mother. But that's the only thing that's tickling my brain when it comes to like off the field. I don't remember about the COVID part of that. But Gerald McCoy was their big 3-year, $18.3 million signee. Never ended up being a part of it at all. Greg Zierlein was their second big free agent signee, Paul, from the Rams, the kicker, a 3-year, $7.5 million deal. Their third biggest free agent signing in 2020, Everson Griffin from the Minnesota Vikings. Do you remember Everson Griffin's time in Dallas?
Very short, yeah.
Yeah, 1 year, $6 million deal. Clinton Dix.
Didn't make the team.
Didn't make the team. They signed him on a 1-year deal from the Chicago Bears, and I'll round it out with this. Their fifth free agent signing, and they had others, but this one I'm just for the sake of time here. Andy Dalton. They signed him from the Bengals, 1 year, $3 million deal.
And they needed him that year because Dak broke his leg.
So Gerald McCoy, who doesn't end up playing, Greg Zierlein, who's a kicker, Everson Griffin, Clinton Dix, Andy Dalton. It is not really great, is it? That is not the best, I guess, free agency moves that could have possibly been made. So that's a year where you definitely feel like they're not really getting the best that they possibly could through free agency. Then you fast forward to 2021. Their biggest free agent signing that year was in-house. It was Jordan Lewis. They signed him to a 3-year, $13.5 million deal. Any idea who their highest non-in-house signee was in the 2021 free agency period?
I should know this.
I don't know if you should or not. Okay. I don't think it's really all that well known, actually.
Yeah.
Terrell Basham.
Oh, yeah, Bash. Yeah.
Linebacker from the Jets, 2 years, $5.5 million. They signed Keanu Neal to a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
They signed Kyron Brown, corner from the Jets, to a 2-year, less than $2 million deal. And they signed defensive end Brent Urban from the Bears to a 1-year, $1.7 million deal. Those were their top 5 free agent signings. So that's not great, guys. He's what we're establishing.
Yeah, he's with the Ravens and just re-signed with them. He's a rotational player for them. So, yeah. But, yeah, other than, like, Keanu Neal, I think he's with the Bucs now. I don't know.
But as far as impact in Dallas, are you feeling like any of, like, the 10 names that I mentioned so far have done much of anything?
All stopgaps.
Yeah. So then 2022, the biggest signees, the top 3 biggest signings were all in-house. It was Dorrance Armstrong, it was Jaron Kearse, and it was punter Brian Anger. Their biggest non-Dallas free agent signee, Dante Fowler Jr., a 1-year, $3 million deal.
And they got a couple years out of him. Like, that's not bad. Like, they got good production out of those
So that was a good one.
That was good. They got good production.
Not splashy.
But again, a splash in addition to those guys maybe would have helped this team get over the top.
The second non-Dallas in-house signee, Anthony Barr, from the Minnesota Vikings, a 1-year, $2 million deal.
Came in later because they needed a linebacker. Yeah.
And then they re-signed Leighton Vander Esch. They re-signed Carlos Watkins. So, like, most of their deals that offseason were in-house guys. But you had Fowler Jr., you had Anthony Barr. Their third outside signee, James Washington, wide receiver, Pittsburgh Steelers, the Oklahoma State star.
Did nothing for them.
But it was built up. He was going to be like this next great receiver and did absolutely nothing for them. And then Ryan Nall, running back from the Chicago Bears, was their other signee. Teamer. 1 year, less than $1 million total to end up signing him. And then you get into this past year, 2023. You had a bunch of in-house signees, like a bunch of in-house. Donovan Wilson, Leighton Vander Esch, Cooper Rush, Dante Fowler again, Jonathan Hankins, C.J. Goodwin, Tack McKinley. Those are all in-house free agent signees. Do you know who their biggest, I guess, 2023 outside signee would have been? No way you know this.
No. The biggest one? Yeah, they did. I mean, they made trades. I mean, they like Gilmore and Cooks, but...
Yeah, but not free agents.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trent Sieg, long snapper
who they just brought back,
from the Raiders, a 1-year, $1.2 million deal. They signed tackle Chuma Edoga from the Falcons to a 1-year deal. Ronald Jones, the running back from Kansas City, a 1-year deal. Ben Bonagoo, a 1-year deal. Rico Dowdle, a 1-year deal. So that is your history of Cowboys free agency over the last 4 years or so. And I wanted to go back farther, but just didn't know for the lack of time here of how far we could go back. But I don't know. I think that's kind of proof positive that they still were able to make moves that through the draft and gain some stars that way. And through trades, I feel like is where their most valuable pieces have possibly come from, because based on free agency, what I laid out there, I do have to give you a little bit of credit when you were sort of semi-ranting the other day about the lackluster free agent signings and Dallas never does anything. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, man, they're a star-laden team. Like, I can list off like 5 stars off their team in the blink of an eye. But it's through the draft primarily, and some of it through trade. But based on what I just read out there, I don't know a single name that I just mentioned that wasn't an in-house re-signee guy that is maybe even familiar to most people out there listening. Like, they've done a little to nothing, and I found that fascinating when I heard Bob kind of going over of, like, James Washington was supposed to be a big get, or any of the other names that I mentioned, many of them, Dante Fowler Jr., some who have made some impact, some who have made absolutely none at all. But, yeah, for all intents and purposes, they have signed in-house or gone through trade, but free agent, big fish, splashy signings, they have done nothing of the sort, really, throughout the last 5 years or so, unless you want to count re-signing Dak Prescott, re-signing their own guys. But, yeah, they have not made a big splash in free agency what feels like a while now.
I think it is a good plan to use most of your cap room retaining the guys who are good on your team.
Yes.
That is a very good plan. The thing is that you sometimes hit walls where you need someone else that's a big star to come in and I don't know if they, like, if Jerry forgot that, like, a guy in the Ring of Honor, Charles Haley in the Hall of Fame, was someone who did that for them, that Deion Sanders was someone who did that for them, that flipped the NFC after their back-to-back run was interrupted by the 49ers. Like, that's the signing I'm talking about. Not signing 70 of them,
right?
But signing, like, go find your Charles Haley, go find your Deion Sanders, like, go make that, like, when there are guys that are just, like, they went out and got Terrell Owens, like, really helped them, like, go do those things again. Nobody's saying to go get all of them. They've just overcorrected so much because they're so afraid of the salary cap. And no one else lives in the same kind of fear of it. Look, the Bills were $50 million over when
Chiefs
it started.
Just signed guys.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you possibly do that?
The Bills just now signed Curtis Samuel, someone who the Cowboys could have benefited from. 3 years, $30 million, $15 million guaranteed. That's a very reasonable contract. And Curtis Samuel's probably maybe a little under what he would get because he has never once in his career played with a quarterback like Josh Allen. So that'll be way worth it after probably year one when he has a great year this year if he stays healthy. Like, those are things that they're just not doing that well. And they're going, okay, we need a defensive end, Everson Griffin. Okay, we need a linebacker, Anthony Barr. Like, do a little more work on this. Like, just get deeper.
Yeah, so I just wanted to take that trip down memory lane to really gauge. And there was a number of other, like, they're 1 year, 750. I mean, people that not worth mentioning. So I try to save kind of like the top 5 over the last 4 or 5 seasons, and that's what it looks like. I mean, some names that are somewhat familiar, but nothing in terms of big splash. Again, that mostly coming through re-signing their own stars that were homegrown, and that's what we'll continue to see them do. They got to pay CeeDee Lamb here pretty soon. They got to pay Micah Parsons, right? They've got to pay. I guess who else would be coming up in line? I mean, we know Dak's forever getting renegotiated because that's
Dak, CD, Micah, Tyler Smith eventually.
Okay, Tyler
right?
Smith.
So eventually there's going to be a day where Zach Martin is going to retire, right?
But
so
they've been good about
Deron Bland. If he continues if they have Deron Bland and Trayvon Diggs together for a little while, they're going to have to probably play Deron Bland. If Mozzie Smith winds up being good, who knows? I mean, but they, like, right now, that's kind of who they're going to have coming up. And they have a lot of holes. But yeah, I would say that the next one after that would be Tyler Smith, and then the rest is kind of interchangeable because Trayvon Diggs is already under contract. Micah, CD, Dak, then probably Tyler Smith, and then maybe Deron Bland. Although that could be one that they just have to let go because you'd be spending a lot of money at one position here in a couple of years. But
yeah, well, I mean, if they want to sign a guy on the team, they're typically going to be able to do that. That's what history has proven, and that's. I mean, every team has that advantage of being able to re-sign their own guys, but. I don't know. I'll default to Paul's emotions earlier this week when getting fired up about Cowboys free agency because I pushed back a little bit on it, but I was thinking more along the lines of they have stars. Like, what do you mean they need more stars? They have stars, but when you start to actually go over the list and see what little they actually have done, when in my mind it's still burned in my brain that this is the team that went and got Dion, or this is the team that went and got Charles Haley, or this is the team
a long time ago. Yeah,
but that was 20-something years ago. Yeah, and so. It is a much different time, and I had to recorrect my brain and realize, oh, wow, they really haven't done much in free agency the last few years in just the true sense of free agency. So, that's why I wanted to go over those. And I'll just close it out here. Not much else today, but just a couple of other notes. For one, I know that there's little murmurs all over social media, more of the playoff structure and all of that, I guess, is starting to come together. But there were just a couple of NFL notes, and that was Sam Howell, quarterback formerly of North Carolina and the Washington Commanders, is headed to the Seattle Seahawks in a trade there as Dan Quinn continues to retool the roster there up in D.C. under new ownership. And also wanted to make mention of the fact that Desmond Ridder, the former Cincinnati quarterback, obviously the Falcons go and they sign Kirk Cousins. Well, Desmond Ridder being traded to the Arizona Cardinals. So that is where the former Cincinnati Bearcat will now continue on his NFL career as, again, Kirk Cousins takes over. So there's a couple things off the radar.
Good stuff, Craig. Yeah, that Sam Howell, Geno Smith is the quarterback there, but I don't know how long that's really going to be. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Seahawks, and Emery's going to get Mike Cassaza on the phone here in a second. But you might have to take it off of the roadcaster there, Emery, on the source. But yeah, I would not be surprised to see them draft a Spencer Rattler or Michael Pratt or something like that, because maybe have a developmental guy, or just kind of randomly, maybe they're like, you know what, we're going to take J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix and go, this is our future here. So wouldn't surprise me because they a whole new administration there. Not John Schneider, but a whole new coaching staff there in Seattle. We're going to talk a little West Virginia basketball. Our friend Mike Cassaza joins us now, 24/7 Sports. And Mike, this was very expected that they were going to do a national search, and I guess they probably would have had to have a fantastic year for that not to happen. What do you think? Where do you think the search will start and focus on? What are they really looking to bring to West Virginia? Because there's not another Bob Huggins out there, so it would be kind of hard to say we just want that guy, just less controversial.
Yeah, in a perfect world, right? You just kind of snap your fingers and get that guy out of the lab, which I think is kind of what they're going to try to do. It's a landmark hire for any athletic director. And when you're as established as Bob Huggins was here, that can be really difficult because you kind of have to dictate the terms of his exit. And this is a newish athletic director. He's been here a little bit more than 12 months. I believe a lot of people know in that area, Ren Baker. So Bob Huggins made the hard part really easy by kind of acting up and acting out twice in about 6 or 7 weeks over the summer and really let the school know the decision. So that becomes inconvenient at that time, but they spent 9 or 10 months really kind of plotting who would be available and then just tracking those coaches during the year about, what's the profile for West Virginia for the Big 12, defense, offense, whatever. And, where does it start? It starts with not Bob Huggins, but that's important too because it's been controversial with him here. He's wanted to get his job back, as recently as the middle of the season. He showed up at senior night for West Virginia and also Cincinnati. There's still some questions as to exactly what he's up to and what he's trying to do, but they've come out and said it's not going to be him. They can't be more clear than that. But now they have to figure out how can they get somebody who knows that Bob Huggins is not going to be lingering and kind of casting a shadow, but also this isn't going to be an affiliate of his, like an Andy Kennedy at UAB, at Jared Calhoun at Youngstown State. They're going to go far from outside the tree. And this is going to be the athletic director's hire. And for the longest time, this has been Bob Huggins' program. And there's not a large number of schools anymore that are identified by their head coach. And it's probably time for West Virginia to see, what the program can actually do and how it can sustain on its own. So get the right guy who can pull all the levers.
Mike, I know now everybody's ready to move forward and turn that page, but Josh Eilert dealt a tough hand just because of the situation that you mentioned a second ago. I don't want to call it a throwaway year or anything like that because of the people involved working hard, but how would you describe just the last few months and just the ups and downs of this basketball season?
I mean, I don't think that's the wrong phrase. It's harsh, but let's be real. They have more losses than ever. They have more losses than ever in school history. And this is a pretty proud program that went 0-9 on the road and 0-13 away from home. Got beat by 30-plus points 3 times in conference play. It just didn't have anything right. And I think if you also factor in the fact that they had what looked like a really good NIL class and it just imploded on them, and you could just tell the pieces didn't fit and the players frankly weren't good enough, and maybe the coaching wasn't up to par to actually mix everything in the right direction. None of this is repeatable. So you can throw that away. I think that's okay. It's a harsh thing, but that's the reality here. And you go in a different direction. You find somebody who they are going to, it's not popular because it's 2024, but they're going to make a push for a defensive minded head coach because defense stills culture. And if you can get culture by that, that's going to fix a lot of what their problems is here. But they're also going to have to bring in maybe 10 people from the transfer portal or the freshman class. And you're going to have a lot of clay you get to mold. So I think that it's maybe the, how about this? It was like the windshield wiper year. You make a mess in the windshield and you press the lever and all of a sudden you hear a couple squeaks and everything's clean and you start over again. I think that's kind of where they're at right now.
How much did the Raekwon battle situation, like him, having to go to court and all that, kind of affect the continuity of this year?
It was a confluence of events because he was eligible after 9 games. The court ruling also made a player they had no intention to play eligible, and you're not going to tell him that he's eligible to play and he's going to continue redshirting. And at the exact same time, their starting point guard, Kerr Kriisa, who, by the way, was suspended for an NCAA violation he committed at Arizona. I don't know why it didn't wash up on Arizona's shore, but just Virginia's, but he was suspended for 9 games. So in the 10th game of the season, they're on the road against UMass with Bob Huggins in the crowd. And they have 3 new players in the team, except right before tip, they realize that Battle isn't going to play because he's got the flu. So they don't even get their full lineup on the floor that day. And then just to top it off, here, the cherry on the Sunday of the season, their starting center, Jesse Edwards, breaks his wrist, needs surgery, and he misses 9 games. So it never even got into neutral. Never mind drive first gear, second gear. It just, they sputtered and sputtered, and they didn't have their full roster till the 20th game of the year. They were 7-13 at that point, and they just weren't going to punch back in this conference.
Has it been uncomfortable with Bob Huggins hanging around?
It's yeah. I've talked to him a couple times, and I mean it's been pleasant. He looks great. He's lost a lot of weight. People will tell you anecdotally he's taken his health very seriously, and I think the job sometimes doesn't permit that. The job can be unforgiving, and I think that he's been open about, he's had some devices and some addiction problems he's had to address. And I don't think the season lets you really do that sometimes. So out of the circus for a while, it's been good for him. That's been redeeming. And then if you just even watch what happened yesterday, their biggest donor is Ken Kendrick. And he was one of the co-founders of the trust. He owns the Arizona Diamondbacks, and he nuked Huggins on the radio. Just said that he has no place leading young men. And then Huggins came back, and I just saw a thing that said Huggins statement. I was like, oh my gosh, how bombastic and combative is this going to be? And it was the highest road you could possibly take if you're Bob Huggins in that situation, where he said that, I hope that people look at this criticism of me and think of other people who struggle with addiction in West Virginia and the shame they feel and how they deal with it. And when everybody's pointing arrows at you because you have problems, it can be hard for you to admit or confront or address your problems. And to me, that was quite contrite of him. And he's never really had that reputation in the past year. Most of his immediate reaction upon his retirement or resignation, by the way, we had a week-long dispute as to whether or not he did or did not retire or resign, or if his wife resigned or retired for him because he doesn't know how to use email. Total mess. But it was always not his fault. It was something else, someone else. My lawyer wanted me to do this. My wife sent the email. They never gave me time to get my job back and go to rehab and assess things. It was never his fault. And to see him come back yesterday and say, I'm working on myself here. I hope that people can look what happened to me. Don't treat other people the same way. That was refreshing. I think that's like a big step, but he's definitely wanted to get his job back. He's had relationships with players. Again, he showed up unexpectedly at an exhibition game this year. They didn't tell the university. Bob Huggins have to tell the university he's coming to a basketball game? No. but it was nevertheless notable. And then he's there at senior night walking players across the floor that no one even knew he was coming for that one too. So it's not been perfect this year, but I think that he's slowly understood that there's more important things than trying to fight a battle he's not going to win, which is getting his job back.
Do you foresee him getting another coaching job?
I know that the university's rooting for it. I think that they would be the strongest character witness, whether or not they believe it or mean it. I'm not sure, but they really just kind of want him out of sight, out of mind, for one. And number two, he's such an invisible hand, but in a good way. Whereas if you have a good relationship with him, West Virginia can be donor dependent. And again, their name, image, and likeness apparatus was very strong last year, but so many of the gifts were tied to Bob Huggins being the coach. And just hey, we want this to happen for him at the end of his career. Here's some money, make it happen. Well, those gifts were not made in perpetuity. And also, he's not around anymore. So they're not going to give money to a coach they don't know. They're not going to give money to a university they don't agree with the decision they made. But if you get him on good terms, you get those people back, the wheel starts spinning in the right direction again. But also, he's out of the way of coaches who probably have to wonder, is he going to be interfering? Is he going to be undermining with donors or sponsors or anything like that? And, just anecdotally, West Virginia is interested in Chris Mack. Chris Mack was the head coach of Xavier. Xavier and Cincinnati just historically do not have a great relationship. But on top of that, Chris Mack had to deal with the Rick Pitino fallout when he took over at Louisville. He was not the coach right after, but he was the coach after the guy who was after Pitino. That's the exact same thing that he'd be walking into here. He's not the guy after Huggins, but he's the guy after the guy who's after Huggins. I think he'd want to have a lot of answers to questions he would have about who's going to be there, which makes me think that, again, Ken Kendrick, just like I said, nuking Huggins yesterday, makes me think that's about the boldest and brightest all clear sign you can give any potential candidate. If a guy who wields as much power as Ken Kendrick can go with Bob Huggins, who wields as much power as he does, you pretty much have seen where West Virginia's allegiance is and where the donation allegiance is. I think that's a strong indication of where things are going, and that was probably meant to speak to prospective coaches.
Do you see them Dusty May is probably the hottest name outside of the Power Five coaches that will get talks. Do you see them making a run at coaches like that, or because he's going to be involved in probably Louisville, probably Ohio State, and a couple others, that they maybe would back off that and go in a different direction?
There's a relationship with their athletic director and Dusty May. They know each other. So when they were having these conversations last year in June in earnest as to who they could get, they talked about a couple of people. I know this to be fact, like Andy Enfield, Chris Holtman, and Dusty May. And none of those guys were going to leave. There's more people, but just everybody had an example. Like Andy Enfield had just signed Bronny James. He wasn't leaving in June for West Virginia. Chris Holtman, there was a question as to whether or not he would leave, but he also knew his AD was leaving, and he probably wasn't on firm ground with the transition. And then May somehow brought his entire team back, despite outside interference from NIL suitors and all that. There's no way he's leaving his team in June, even for a high major job. But they've been on the scent for a while, and May is like the one guy who's still standing. You're not hiring Enfield. You're not hiring Holtman right now. Paul did that. So May is still there, but everybody wants him because I know their record isn't as good this year. But just imagine being FAU and for the first time ever taking everybody's best shot every night. I think their season is perhaps more impressive this year, no less impressive, but everybody's going to want a piece of that now too. So how competitive can West Virginia be? I don't think that they're going to pay $3.5-4 million for a coach. They paid Huggins $4.15. $3 million is probably the soft spot, and their athletic director said yesterday they're not going to get into a bidding war. They're not going to let other people's business dictate their business. I don't like reading between the lines and putting words into people's mouths, but that kind of makes me think that they're not going to outbid a Louisville or an Ohio State for a Dusty May, which means they're going to go to a second cut of candidates, which I think is pretty good. I've heard there's definite interest in Darian DeVries. But further down the list, a Mark Byington at JMU, somewhere in between, a Kyle Smith at Washington State, who has probably made it clear he's looking to move on because of the situation in the Pac-12. I think that this is a good job that they fancy as a top 15, top 20 program, and they're going to have to find a way to get a top 15, top 20 caliber coach. And boy, if they don't, I don't know what they've been doing for 9 months, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, great stuff. Thank you so much for hopping on. Always great to have you on the show when we do, and we'll talk to you again probably when they hire a coach.
Right around Final Four time, I think. I have vacation after that, so the sooner the better. I hope Brent Baker's listening.
I'll send him a message and say, for Mike's sake, let's be cool about this, Rand.
Thanks, like it.
All right, thanks. Mike Cassaza there with us on 365 Sports. I would say right now, and look, if you're a Louisville fan watching this, I would rather have the West Virginia job than the Louisville job right now because I don't think it's as big of a climb.
At Paul Catalina on Twitter is where you can find him, Louisville fans. No, I'm just kidding.
But I mean, I just truthfully, like, the fan bases are almost the same, though, really.
Right.
Like, they're very passionate about it. It's been less of a time for West Virginia than it has been for Louisville. And that's a Big 12 job. And,
shoot, man, the Louisville job might be a Big 12 job here pretty soon.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the one thing. Like, that's another thing. I saw the dumb argument. I mean, I get everybody's got to have their take on the hot topic, and so like Scott Drew's one of those. But like the whole idea of like getting out of the Big 12 because it's too tough is just a dumb reason for him to leave a 20-year job that you've built from scratch. I'm sorry, but like if you feel like he's going to leave, there's got to be a better reasons. And the only one that I can really come up with is that he just simply has a desire to do something different, which is human. And I don't know if that's the case, so I can't say I 100% believe this or not. If I knew that Scott Drew was not worried about new challenges, then yeah, it would be a no-brainer. We wouldn't even bring it up as a topic because it would be pointless. But that's the one missing piece. But yeah, I think that West Virginia is a great job. There's a lot of passion. The Bob Huggins thing is strange, like how much he's kind of been around and clearly is fishing for a job, and good for Mike to clear up that it's not going to be back at West Virginia, although I don't know how many people really would have thought that, but he put the stamp on that there. And so, it's an attractive job with a passionate fan base and resources. And I think that they are licking their chops to get a guy to come in there and get basketball fired up again. So, I'm fascinated to see who they end up getting here in the next couple of weeks. And for his sake, before vacation starts.
Yeah. I really, look, given when Bob Huggins did what he did and said what he said, but believe me, as a Catholic, it kind of took me aback, and it wasn't good. But I also know that I don't think he meant any ill will by it. He was dealing with some problems, and he's always been a guy who's not had a filter, which is one of the things we liked about him. But sometimes when you don't have a filter, there are times where it shows you should have at least a small one. Mm-hmm. And so I hope the best for Bob Huggins. I always enjoyed talking to Bob Huggins when we got to in press conferences and all that. He's a very interesting dude. So I hope the best for him. I'm glad to hear him say that. Like, that is a part of recovery, is admitting that, like, there are things that are your fault that you didn't think were your fault and all that. So, yeah, good for Bob. But, yeah, I do think him being there still casts a long shadow on things. Yeah. And Barry Alvarez was at Wisconsin forever, and I don't think it helped their head coaches in the interim because he was kind of lording over the program.
I'll give an example right here, man. Art Briles, when he showed up at the
Rice
football game and was sitting in the stands after his firing, and I'm not saying that Huggins and him are the same thing. They're different situations, but I guess I'll say on Huggins first, the statement that Mike passed along about sort of where he was in his recovery as far as the way he was framing it and kind of maybe the realization that he's now been able to come to about his problems and sorting through those. I think that's magnificent. I think that's all very good. And hopefully Bob continues to work through those steps that he feels or others feel that he needs to take to get on the other side of what is very clearly or is a problem for him that kills a lot of people. So I hope that's something that continues trending in the right direction. But yeah, like there's the whole Art Briles thing around these parts, and had his very vocal fans that wanted him brought back under whatever circumstances possible that he needed to be back. And that created nothing but a massive backlash and terrible PR for the entire school. I mean, that blew up in everybody's face and had the exact opposite reaction of those who chose to basically protest. And then he shows up at there was definitely the showing up at the Rice game. And it's like, dude, like, do you not understand? Yeah. Like, you shouldn't be in the crowd. Like, you should not be at a game. Like, you should not be out in public, really. I mean, I guess the being out in public is, in your camp's eyes, okay because you don't really feel that you've done anything wrong, but not at a freaking, I almost said another word, but not at a Baylor game. Like, what in the hell are you thinking? So that's what it kind of reminds me of. Not the exact same scenario, but just like, dude, you don't need to be around here, and it's not making it any better or changing anything that you're around here. That's where I guess I'm coming from.
No, yeah, it
and
doesn't.
so, Bob, we know you love West Virginia. We know that you're wanting to get a job, and you wish if you had your ways that you could get that job in particular back. But as Mike pointed out there, like, it's not happening, and you being around is not going to do anything positive or change that. So hopefully that's as something that they can move past, and the sooner they hire a coach, the quicker they'll be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, I want to go back to the Cowboys free agent thing real quick before we get to Mickey in the next segment. Derrick Henry today on Mad Dog Radio said the Cowboys didn't even call him. And he guess where he lives?
In Dallas.
He lives in Dallas.
Yeah, there was like an Instagram video last week or something of him buying a new house, right? And there was the realtor all up in, I guess the realtor must have an account or something, and it was a home in Dallas, and that got a lot of people speculating that was a surefire sign that he must be heading to Dallas in free agency. But no, according to that report,
apparently, like, not always, but like for several years.
Well, he was buying a new house, and that had everybody in the comments section going crazy of like, that must mean, I didn't realize he lived there for years.
Yeah, a couple years he's been there.
Well, I remember that now because that was part of the whole connection to begin with. But so there was a new house, and I just remember reading the flood of comments about, Cowboys this and Cowboys that, and to hear a few days later that they hadn't even scratched the surface, like not even a phone call. Well, that's going to be disappointing for some people, for sure. But I don't know how to explain that one.
I mean, at least call him.
Just see what Eastside has to say. Yeah. I'm sure he would have been receptive to at least hear you out, but instead he's going to be playing for the Baltimore Ravens, and I think having a pretty good time of things up there.
And here's the thing. It's just as a fan, he's one of my favorite. Like, as a fan of the NFL, he's one of my favorite players to watch. I love Derrick Henry. I've loved Derrick Henry since he was at Alabama. I loved him. Like, I just love watching him play. And it would just be nice to have him, like, I don't want it to be Eddie George all over again, which was depressing when they signed him at the very end of his career. But still, like, just would have been nice.
Just a phone call would be nice, as some would say. Didn't even get that for Derrick Henry.
Yeah, absolutely. It just stings so much when they do this. But when we come back, Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com, joins us on his thoughts. And we know Mickey's a very anti-free agency guy. But his thoughts on what their plans are going forward and how you navigate this and keep the window open for the stars that you have, because you have a quarterback that's coming off his best season. That still has a lot of questions about him, but he's still coming off his best ever season. You've got a wide receiver who has proven himself to be one of the stars of the league, in the top 5 in that position in the league, in CeeDee Lamb. You have maybe the best individual defensive player in the league in Micah Parsons. And you've got a nucleus, but you have to navigate some things. This is 365 Sports.
Shop big savings during the Ram Truck Month at Allen Samuels in Waco. Ram 1500 is the most luxurious and technologically advanced Ram 1500 ever. There's a great selection on the lot and ready for immediate delivery. Ram Truck Month sales event is a winner at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Are you ready to elevate your Waco experience to a whole new level? Look no further than the Baylor Club, where you can indulge in one-of-a-kind luxury and unwind in our exclusive lounge area. Located in the heart of McLean Stadium, this elite club offers 5-star member atmosphere for all your work and play needs. With a master culinary team and outstanding hospitality, we take pampering to a whole new level. Weddings, milestones, businesses, and birthdays. A stadium roaring with Bear Spirit featuring stunning city skyline views. The Baylor Club truly has it all. The Baylor Club is the destination for Baylor basketball pregame meals, beverages with this special membership offer. If you mention Sikkim 365 or 365 Sports Radio, just ask for John or Devin for details. For interest in membership or your next private event, call 254-710-8080 or Google Baylor Club Linktree for more information on menus, calendars, upcoming special events. Say yes to the Baylor Club today. 254-710-8080 or Google Baylor Club Linktree.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments, with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing his time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak.
Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com, joins us now. And Mickey, the Cowboys are off to their typical slow start in free agency. I don't know if if you're not actually starting, I don't know if it's slow. Like they let the first wave go, and then they let everything else kind of come to them, which the Eric Kendrick signing I think is really interesting, that they've kind of let those dominoes fall. But what is the argument outside of the cap space, which I know is a real issue, but of making like a big splash move to